And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bashing us, him.
All right, attention to roll call.
Outstanding. Good morning, everybody. Monday morning, bright and early. Tom Joyce, already starting out. Coffee and donuts. Here we go. $20. Remember, if you finish the coffee, you better make a fresh pot. Absolutely. Well, Tom Joyce, I hope you have. I hope you don't have to take any breaks or have to break away from the podcast this morning. I'd love to get your input on this case as the manhunt continues. You know, with your background, your experience, we definitely love your input. So, John, good morning. Let's get into it. I think this is pretty high profile. It's getting the media attention. Almost the only other case I can think getting the same media attention is OJ. It's like OJ case again. So what do you think? What are your thoughts, brother?
Yeah, no, dude, it's prolific. It's definitely Sparks House Steakhouse, the Paul Castellano assassination. I mean, it's a prolific media event. I see why everyone's drawn to it. You know, you already have, you know, the true crime analysts already all over it. Like the people that are really into like true crime, they're all over this case already because it just gets weirder and weirder by the minute. Supposedly the guy came in from Atlanta. He was on a bus. He came in on a bus from Atlanta a month ago. Then apparently the backpack gets found, and we'll bring in some of those videos, and they find Monopoly money in the backpack. Like, it's weird, dude. I mean, and you know, I was at, you know, it's funny because I was at a Christmas party. I was at 2 Christmas parties this weekend, and both parties, people that are not cops, everyone was talking about it. I was like, wow. I was like, this like has really grabbed like the national conversation at this point.
Well, before we get into the complexities of this case and the capabilities of the NYPD, along with the FDNY and, of course, the ATF in this case, what are your thoughts on these? I think they're deranged maniacs. I mean, before we get to the serious of this, but there were people that were having a look-alike contest of who could actually look the closest to the potential shooter for this case. Do you think they're deranged? Do you think it's funny? I think it's ridiculous. What do you think?
Listen, you know, I'm a free speech absolutist, so I don't think there's anything that can be done about it. I just think it shows where we are in society, though. I don't think anything should be done about it. If it was my kid, I'd smack him in the face. But you know, I know if it was somebody I knew, I'd definitely say something about it. I think it's wrong. I mean, you know, I think we both have our own issues with the healthcare industry, and I don't think that this is something that where we would ever condone this. You know, I don't hold a CEO responsible for all the ills of a system that's been created years and years and years in the making. You know what I mean? And I think most reasonable people, anyone that has an issue, whether it's the price of medication, if they can get coverage, healthcare, I think we look at it as a failure in the system. So these people are really glorifying, you know, an act of murder, a man assassinated on the streets in New York. And at this point, we really have no idea why. And you know, I don't think this is a Matt Damon situation. So I don't think this CEO was doing anything nefarious to deserve such an act happen to him. And then you have these, you know, these spoiled brats going out dressing up like the murderer and holding a contest inside of Washington Square Park. And to me, it's disgusting. I don't think anything should be done about it, or, you know, I just think it's disgusting.
No, I agree. I believe in the First Amendment too. I'm a huge supporter. I don't think anything should be done about it. But it just shows where we're at. It's like you look at that, you're like, wow, this is disgusting. People are despicable. I mean, how far have we got in this world? People are so deranged that you're celebrating the death of a CEO because of the failures of big pharma and insurance companies in this country. And we've all, I don't care if you had a sick kid, a sick parent, or not, we have all been affected by big pharma and these insurance companies in this country. Absolutely. But at the same token, I think these people are deranged. Yeah, they have a right to do it. But there's right and wrong. And just because you can do it, should you do it? Right, they have a right to do it. I don't think the police should get involved. I don't think anybody should get involved. But I just think it's absolutely morally wrong. And I can't believe there's not people out there protesting. Like, look at these deranged idiots. It doesn't matter if you like insurance companies, if you like the CO, you hated him. The bottom line is someone took his life in a savage, cowardly manner. So that's my thoughts on that. Of course, they're allowed to do it. But you know what? Where are the good men and women to say, you know what? We're going to stand up to them and show them how much, and show the world that they look like idiots.
I mean, unfortunately, this is the name of the game, right? It like glorifies attention. I think Oiler Scootercast was the first one to put it out. I reshared it, and then there were like numerous news articles and media reports. And sometimes I'm like, is like reporting on the stupidity actually making more stupidity? And it might be, you know what I mean? Like showing how ridiculous things are happening, how ridiculous the world is getting. But at the same time, I think things need to be shown, and so on people understand what's going on in the world to try to avoid like where we're falling and where we're failing. And I think yeah, I don't know, man. I sometimes I'm like, should we ignore things like this? But then I'm like, how could you actually ignore it? It's disgusting. This guy was murdered, and people think it's funny. People think it's Halloween. Oh, I'm gonna dress up like next Halloween. This is gonna be a Halloween costume.
I think they should absolutely report on it and expose the stupidity that goes on in this country right now. It's absolutely ridiculous. That's insane to have a lookalike contest. I mean, there's a family out there right now, and there's coworkers out there right now who are suffering right now, suffering the loss of a friend, a loved one, a family member, and there's people celebrating it. That's absolutely ridiculous. It just shows the lack of empathy people have in this world right now. It's sad. By the way, that's a significant picture. So let's get into the complexities of this case. I think this picture is a pinnacle point to start in this case. Of course, people have the opportunity to call 1-800-577-TIPS if you have any tips that could actually lead to the apprehension of this potential shooter. But I think this case is at the heightened level of this battle from the NYPD and the Eric Adams administration of this fight of perception versus truth. And I think this case is the pinnacle moment that no longer can they fight that battle, because the reality is perception is the truth. Perception is reality. And the perception of New York City residents and tourism right now is that New York City is not the safe place that Eric Adams wants people to believe. It shows the state of where New York City is at right now. Shortly before this homicide, this heinous homicide, we had a mentally ill, homicidal, emotionally disturbed maniac cross Manhattan from the west side to the east side and take 3 innocent lives. On the following day, we had the NYPD involved in a gun battle. This is all happening in broad daylight. And now we have a man that was a man, or honestly, it's kind of feminine features, but most likely it looks like a man lurking behind the car, waiting for his prey, and in broad daylight, take action and take the life of another. So I think at this point, no longer could this Eric Adams administration fight this battle of perception versus truth. The information, the data that's put out by Sam Antar and Reza Chowdhury on X with NYPD's own.
Uh-oh. Did we lose you again, Eric?
Where New York City's at.
Yeah. We lost you for a second. We lost you. So, yeah, this photo comes out. This is from Crime Stoppers. We also saw the individual with his face exposed in the hotel lobby where he was covering his face with a different, either a mask or something on his shirt. There was another photo that was supposedly him as well in the train. A lot of question around the backpacks, the color of the backpacks, the color of the hoodies. But this is supposedly the face of the murderer. And, at this point, I've seen a couple of different shots, and I'm not even quick to say this is 100% the face of the murderer. This is just how they believe he resembles. I don't know like what to really believe at this point. First we heard there was a city bike left. Then we heard it wasn't a city bike. There was a lot of talk around, could these be tracked? Could they not be tracked? And still till right now haven't recovered the bike. Could be in a lake. I believe NYPD is using divers right now to search the lake to look for the murder weapon. They did recover the backpack. I'd like to know exactly how they recover the backpack, because in today's NYPD, unfortunately, we see that we don't really get the accurate data reported. We saw that recently when a mass murder was running around the streets of New York and murdered 3 people, walking up and down the block, covered in blood, stabbing people with knives viciously on New York City streets. We saw how the NYPD and the mayor's office misreported how the apprehension took place. So I don't really believe everything that's coming out in the media at this point, and I don't know that anybody should. I mean, it could just be me, but I don't believe that the data that's coming out, and I do believe, if you really are that close on the trail and you're really not looking for help, you're probably at this point, since the guy isn't even apprehended, you're probably gonna not put out intentionally some information, depending on what it was. But information that's vital, even at that point, I don't trust this administration to put out the proper information that could even help result in the capture. It's everything, like you said, everything is really, the sole focus was never on getting this murderer. It is for the squad. I'm not knocking the squads, and I'm not knocking the rank and file. But overall, for this city, the sole focus is perception. I mean, and we saw it before the NYPD even held the press conference. After this man's murder, Eric Adams put out, crime is down, crime is down, crime is down. And that's what he was posting on social media immediately after we just saw one of, a high-profile murder occur on New York City streets.
Shout out to our bed, $9.99 coffee and donuts. Here we go. Good morning, future co-commissioners and Juju. I got my wife to watch the violent with terribly unexpected and sad ending movie last night. Great analysis on Friday from the best well-rounded podcast. Our bed, thank you so much. Kind words. Thank you so much for the coffee and donuts. We appreciate it. Good morning to you. I'll stay a great friend to the podcast. So, before I say this, I just want to clarify. I'm a huge supporter of the rank and file, and especially the detectives. They do a fantastic job. Exemplary. But we have some questions to ask. We have to ask, because of this inadequate, inept leadership that we have in this NYPD upper echelon administration, and also under Eric Adams. How bad has the NYPD taken a hit with manpower, with ability, with DEI technology? Because here we are, it's day 6. And 6 days is a long time in New York City. And when it comes to a high-profile case like this, to not make an actual apprehension. I suspect that the NYPD already has the identity of the actual shooter. They just not haven't wrapped it up yet to make sure that all the loose ends are tightened, to have probable cause, and to actually have a good case, right? They want to make sure when they take a shot at this and actually make the arrest that everything's wrapped up. But I would put my money on it that the shooter has already been identified. They just haven't released it to the public. But we have to ask, what is the manpower right now of the detective squads to have the ability to actually do this case on day 6? How bad has the
Eric Stallings giving us little issues today. Yeah, I mean, just dude, I don't want to knock them because listen, it's Manhattan. You froze again, dude.
I don't know what's going on with the stalling today, but it's definitely taking a crap. We having issues with StreamYard?
No.
All right, I apologize, but The bottom line is we got to look at what is the manpower, the capabilities of the NYPD right now because of a diminished police department, because it's inept leadership. Can the squad do their job with the ability that they have? Do they have the manpower, and do they have the right people there because of the veterans that left because of the mandate, because of people like me, CCRB, people like Sal Greco, people like Marlon Bethel? Can the squad do the job to the best of their ability? Do they have the right people there?
I know for a fact that some squads are just getting handed some mopes that have no business being there. That they couldn't even run a sector call. No reason they should run a NYPD case. So yeah, I mean, like I still think that overall, like I have confidence in the rank and file of the NYPD. I believe there's a lot of like high performing people in a lot of places. I do think that they are diminished. I think they're hurting. I don't think every case is going to be met with the same fervor as this case, obviously, and the same amount of resources and time and consideration, and really giving the detectives what they need to apprehend the suspect. Listen, it's Manhattan. You worked in Manhattan. You actually did street crime in Manhattan. I never did, but I could imagine how much more difficult it is. When I was in Staten Island, one of the things I remember is I had a sergeant. He was from Manhattan. He said, "I can't believe you guys get everybody." He's like, "We never used to get anybody." He's like, "We never used to get anybody. Like when there was a robbery happen, we would just boom. We would always be right on top 2-3 hours, maybe at the most. Normally we were getting people right then and there as things would happen." And I was like, it's Staten Island. It's dark out. It's night. You see headlights in any direction. More than likely, that's your perpetrator, right? Like you see a car fleeing, more than likely, it's a lot easier to see things than when you're in Manhattan and there's 100,000 people walking down the block and you could dip into any store, any train station. Things are confusing around that many people. So I could see the immediate apprehension, it being very difficult. Especially someone that has a plan, that knows what they're going to do, how they're going to dip, and someone that knows the ins and outs of the city. I even think in the days coming that it's going to be a difficult task. I'm concerned. My concerns are the lack of evidence that we've gotten since. They did track him to the hostel, excuse me, which I think was, they did basically through cameras. That's my opinion on it. I haven't spoke to anybody. I'm not going to call anyone to try to get any type of information that isn't out there. They don't want public. But I believe that they did that through the use of cameras. So I think that's good work. I would like to know where the bike went, though. Like, where did that bike end up? They did track the school bag. And again, I really would like to know how they got it. Shout out to Rich Raj, $20 to the podcast. Good morning, John and Eric and everyone on the channel. Rich, good morning to you, brother. Thank you for always being here. So I got a couple of videos related to this. This is coming out from NBC4. Let's see what they got to say about it. This was about 2 days ago now.
Let's get to the major developments tonight in the search for the man who killed UnitedHealtcare CEO Brian Thompson. And we just told you about that backpack that was found late today in Central Park, which the suspect might have left behind. But just moments ago, the FBI released this poster. Take a look. The feds now offering a reward of up to $50,000 for information leading to the arrest and conviction of Thompson's killer. News Force Chris Jose joins us live from Central Park tonight with the latest. Chris.
Well, Natalie, the FBI now assisting in a nationwide manhunt. Meanwhile, right here in Central Park, a major break in the case tonight. Have a look back behind me here. You can see officers here still at the scene near the band shell. There's the flashing lights and the officers on the ground. It's here where police possibly found a bag linked to the killer. The manhunt for a suspected CEO killer going beyond New York City. The NYPD revealing the suspect, seen here without a mask in the lobby of an Upper West Side hostel, was last spotted at the George Washington Bridge bus station.
Those buses are interstate buses. That's why we believe he may have left New York City.
The NYPD's chief of detectives giving a timeline of the gunman's escape. Surveillance video tracking his whereabouts from the crime scene up to Central Park, where he traveled on a bike and exited at West 77th Street.
Eventually, we have him on 86th Street. and Columbus Avenue walking. He loses the bike. And then from there, we have him in a taxi cab, and the taxi cab takes him up to 178th Street and Broadway, which, as we know, is the Port Authority bus center.
Joseph Kenny says there is video of the man entering the bus station but not leaving. Police don't know which bus he was on. Friday night, a major break in the case. Officers doing a grid search of Central Park, finding a gray backpack possibly linked to the shooter. Drones flying overhead, assisting. We're inside NYPD's drone room. This is where the team oversees the operation. Real-time information monitored closely.
The mission is very clear, Chris. The mission is to find whatever evidence that may have been left behind inside the park.
Deputy Commissioner of Operations, Cass Daughtry, showing us how the unit coordinated the effort. There's a live nighttime feed with thermal imaging. Investigators also playing back daytime video of the search.
9 o'clock this morning, myself, the chief of detectives, and the chief of department briefed the police commissioner. We laid out a plan for her on how we're going to do a complete, methodical, slow grid search of Central Park.
Daughtry learning officers found the backpack during our interview. A senior official telling News 4 the bag was taken unopened to a lab where investigators would check it for fingerprints, DNA, and whatever else may be inside.
Chris, there has been detectives that haven't went home yet since this incident happened.
Even with a growing amount of images captured on camera, no suspect has been named. Police hopeful by releasing this image of the suspect, the only visual revealing his face, someone will come forward.
We want a wider audience to see the picture outside of New York City.
The $50,000 reward from the FBI is separate from the $10,000 reward from Crime Stoppers here in New York City. Atlanta police saying today they were contacted by the NYPD, cops down south prepared to assist. Of course, the big question tonight is the killer headed back down to the southeast region of the U.S. We're live in Central Park tonight. Chris Jose, News 4 New York.
What do you think about that, Eric?
Well, when we first covered this actual shooting, I had said I'm pretty confident because he came here on a Monday and he was shot on Wednesday that someone came from out of state. To actually know his itinerary, to actually be so intimate, to know his movements and his whereabouts, and he's only here for 2 days, I was confident that this person came out of state. So I think that's where they should be looking is buses, obviously trains, and how this person got out of this person of interest got out of the city. In their whereabouts. So what's important to look at, of course, in this case, the timeline is the actual shooting, right? We have to look at the movements. We have to backtrack and go back to what happened before to the actual shooting. And we need to look at the post movement of this potential, of this person of interest, of this actual subject. So that's the pinnacle moment. I think the shooting was about 6:44, something like that. But the point is, what happened before that? So they'll have to backtrack CCTV and actually moving forward to see how this person got out of the city. I'm pretty confident they left the city right away. I know there's been a lot of talk about the city bikes as far as did he pay for it, the person of interest, the subject? Was he a member or not? I can tell you this. Working in the Lower East Side and working in Manhattan, when the city bikes were at the height of the representation of the city bikes, most of them were broken. Most of these latches were broken. So it's possible also that one of these latches were broken and he knew that and didn't even pay for it. So to not leave another fingerprint and footprint. But again, it's really hard to move around the city without leaving a fingerprint or footprint. So it goes back to what I said, does the NYPD actually have the manpower, the capability, and ability to make the apprehension as they would before? We have the finest detectives, but did we lose the finest detectives also because of the mandate, because of the pressure of CCRB, because of morale, because of the camaraderie, because of inept leadership to actually conduct an investigation in this manner? This takes an extreme amount of man hours. This is tiresome. This is cumbersome. This is a lot of minutia of watching CCTV, of following the movement of CCTV. And what did we lose also? We lost the biggest asset in the prior administration. We lost the biggest asset with former police commissioner Dermot Shea, and Eric Adams had an opportunity to restore it. And drones and all this other technology is fancy and pretty, but it's supplemental. And the biggest asset is anti-crime. And I'm pretty confident an anti-crime guy would have saw a potential subject, a person of interest, lurking behind a car for 5 minutes before he carried out this heinous shooting. An anti-crime guy with that police observation, with that keen eye, would have saw that and would have paid attention to it and possibly stopped this shooting.
I mean, listen, it's Midtown in the morning. 7 o'clock, 6:48 or something approximately. Our crime guy's even out at that point in time. I don't know, I don't know that in the height of policing in New York City that this doesn't happen. I don't know that you stop this. Maybe you apprehend them quicker. And, I'm not going to lie. When I look at that stabbing that occurred, I mean, that's really a failure in public safety. How did that person, the stabber, and the ranged individual covered in blood walking with 2 knives, get cross town, murder another person, and then walk blocks away and murder another person? When I look at that, I say that there is a big problem in the apprehension plan of the NYPD. But I think, in high profile cases, when they get like this, I still think there is, the resources are there and nobody better. Maybe the leadership's lacking. I'm not going to lie. And maybe there's a lot of seasoned people that are no longer there that should be there. And I think they're losing more and more people by the day. But, I think that you're not going to get a response like this anywhere in the world. And I really think that the NYPD only had about 24 hours to grab them. And once they didn't, they might not even have had 24 hours, honestly. I thought immediately upon watching this guy is headed out of New York. He's headed out of the city. He's definitely headed out of the city. I don't know if he's headed out of New York, but he's out of the city. He's getting out of the city. He's going to places where they're not covered in cameras, to leave around all this much evidence. So, I don't know how much I blame or don't blame them at this point. I kind of want to just give them the benefit of the doubt at this point. I think, this stuff bothers me though. Like when I see this video, I mean, to me, it's a different mask than what we saw in the cab. It's a different backpack than what we see on the video of the shooting. You see black backpack. In the cab, the person had a COVID mask, in a surgical mask, excuse me. In this video, the person has like a neck mask where he just picks it up, a black one. Similar green jacket. Feminine features, definitely. I could say that maybe the face looks similar, the eyebrows look similar, but it's hard. It's grainy, So there's a lot of questions around it. NYPD has a $5,000 reward out, but the FBI has a $50,000 reward out. And, I think at this point, the FBI is involved because I believe this person is on the run nationally, and not that he's out of reach of, because we will go apprehend people across, anywhere. They will go apprehend people, the NYPD, anywhere. They'll fly detectives out to go get them. But I think this person's in the win.
Well, we have a joint effort on all fronts when it comes to this case. One, because it's high profile, it's prolific, and the media frenzy that's going on with this case needs the attention of the FBI, along with the NYPD, and of course ATF because of the silencer. So we have a full court blitz right now on this case. There's no doubt in my mind. I would put my last dollar that this particular perpetrator, this person of interest, fled the city and actually fled the state. I'm confident that this person of interest is actually out of state, somewhere in the country. Could be Minnesota. I mean, that's where the actual CEO lives. That's where his movement is. That's where he spends most of his time. So there is potential that the actual perpetrator is from Minnesota. So right now it's all conjecture, right? It's all speculation. Is this someone that is offended, upset by the insurance company? Is this someone that was a potential threat? Is this actually a close person to him? Is there an affair? Is there some type of relationship going on? These are all types of grumblings I've been hearing. This is the scuttle, but no one knows at this point. This is all speculation. What we do know, and this is one thing we could all agree on, that this actual homicide was premeditated and it was carried out as a targeted hit. There's no doubt about it. I think this was absolutely planned. I think the movements were definitely planned of this actual perpetrator. So I'm wondering, the actual coffee cup, the backpack, the bike, were these details sloppy, or was it actually done on purpose as a deflection and a distraction for the NYPD? And again, John, you made some great points. Would the anti-crime be out at that time and make that apprehension? Possibly, possibly not. But what did we have with anti-crime? We had intrusive police work, and we had other cops out there doing intrusive police work because they wanted to become anti-crime. So I find it hard to believe that no one noticed, or maybe we just don't have enough police work. No one noticed someone lurking by a car for approximately 5 minutes before they took this out. No one saw something odd behavior. I would always teach my cops, when you're out there doing work, you have to form a baseline. And when something doesn't fit that baseline, and this actual person of interest did not fit that baseline, hooded up and covered, doesn't fit that baseline, that something would be obtuse and stick out. And that's something you start to pay attention to, right? That's where that eye comes in. But it also just goes for regular citizens also to make these observations. But again, right now we have what's the Daniel Penny effect. People do not want to make observations. They were told by the former chief of transit, Michael Kemper, don't make eye contact out there. We have people out there right now that are scared to actually make observations or intervene because of the Daniel Penny effect. And we also have the most important asset missing, which is anti-crime. You could have drones, you could have all the stuff. And I think, unfortunately, at this point, because this inadequate, inept leadership wants to push technology out there so much for their own legacy, that we're missing the key element, which is the human element, keen eye, good observation police work from anti-crime, from other members of the police department that want to do intrusive police work. And they've leaned so much on the khaki pants, and it has to be a full court press, not just in that small unit to do intrusive police work.
Yeah, I take issue with the technology as their legacy. I don't think that's what it is, dude. You know, there's money behind that. There's money behind this technology, and there's money for them and their family and friends. And that's my assertion. That's what I believe. I believe if I followed the money, I believe if I looked at their trading accounts, I believe if I looked at their family training accounts, if I went through their phone calls, I believe that there are high-level investments being made by senior people who want these contracts to not only be successful because they have a huge personal interest in it. Do I have any evidence of that? No, that's just my opinion. It doesn't make sense. You know, even you guys are on here pointing it out. It doesn't matter what happens. It's always a push to promote the drones, even when there is no reason to promote the drones. It's always that. It doesn't make sense to me. It truly doesn't make sense to me. Like, I don't understand it. It's like, all right, you got the drones up in the air. Do you remember them giving aviation such shout outs? I never remember. I mean, I think aviation has done some great work that I've seen in my time in policing. And even now, even since I've been gone, I think the NYPD aviation unit has done just like tremendous work. And I don't remember the NYPD ever giving them a pat on the back, you know? So it's like, but you know what? There's no money in that one. There's no money in actually in promoting your aviation team. So yeah, there's a lot of weird things happening. What do you think about the backpack being found with Monopoly money though? Like, that is really weird to me, dude. Like, there's Monopoly money in there. Like, what do you think about that? Is that just a coincidence? Is that a message? Is that this person playing with the authorities? Like, what is that?
Well, that's why I said I think there's two sides of the spectrum to look at with this case. So for one, this could be a potentially very savvy perpetrator. One is proficient in the use of firearms, has the capabilities and knowledge to obtain a silencer, how to actually put that silencer on, and how to actually use that firearm with a silencer, because the firearm works differently when it's a semi-automatic with or without attachments, and actually how to clear a jam. So you have to ask yourself, if they're that savvy to do that, or that's why I said the coffee cup, the bike, the backpack, was this done on purpose, along with the ammunition itself that was scraped in, deny, defy, right? Were these things done on purpose because of arrogance, cockiness for this perpetrator? Was it done on purpose for deflection and distraction? And I think that's one side of the spectrum. And the other side of the spectrum, was this particular perpetrator just sloppy, or just kind of a goofball and find the humor in it to try to just detract to the police? I don't know. Honestly, it could be somewhere in the middle at this point. But this particular perpetrator appears to be very arrogant to me and cocky in this act. The capability to actually stand in broad daylight for about 5 minutes by a car, lying in wait for his prey as a predator, maneuvering through Manhattan, actually obtaining a bike to get through Central Park. So the knowledge to actually make this maneuvering. So first of all, I definitely feel this perpetrator definitely came from out of state. Is probably living out of state, but this person definitely lived in New York City, has knowledge of New York City to actually maneuver in that manner in this metropolis, to have the confidence to maneuver from the street to Central Park, to maneuver, to know the subway system, to know the bus system, to actually get out of the state. So I definitely think there's deflection and on purpose distraction.
Yeah, and I think there's a little distraction and in the videos that they're putting out and the pictures that they're putting out and the information that authorities are putting out too. I think there's a little distraction in there. So that's why I said I'm not really, like, at this point, I don't know anything for sure, really. I know that someone was murdered on New York City streets. I know that the individual is not apprehended. I don't really believe anything else at this point. Like, I got to be honest. Like, I don't know. Like, the big debate over the gun. Was it a silenced gun? Is it a gun that's pre-silenced? Is it a World War II gun? Is it a gun that the silencer didn't fit the gun? Is it a single action gun? Is it a semi-automatic gun? And I'm going to sit here and say right now that I don't know what kind of gun it is. I don't even know what kind of shells we used. All I know is that supposedly there were words, defend, oppose, something like that, deflect on the shell casings. Something that's supposed to be related to the healthcare industry, what they use as they fight cases, something along those lines. Like I don't even know if that's true. Like, I'll be honest with you, I don't really believe anything that I'm hearing at this point. Would you take anything other than the fact we know that a man was dead as gospel right now? Is there anything that's out there in the media, including these stills? Would you take any of these things as fact right now?
What'd you say again? Try it.
With any of the evidence that's out here in the media, the supposed evidence that's out here in the media, would you take any of these as fact right now?
No, absolutely not. No, that's actually a great question, John. It's such a great question. No, I think at the same token, there's deflection and distraction intentional by this person of interest, his actual perpetrator. I think the same thing is going on with the FBI and the police department, that there's intentional distraction and deflection to actually catch his perpetrator. I mean, we're on day 6. So 6 days in this game is a long time. I'm sure Tom Joyce could actually speak to it. Within 48 hours, just like the show itself, you want to make that apprehension. The more time that passes, every minute, every moment, there's potential for actual evidence that could be apprehended and discovered that gets diminished. The police department had already done a dive in the waters, seeking out a potential firearm that may have been discarded from this heinous crime, and nothing was actually recovered at this point. So they're going in to do another dive at this point. But a second dive, a second canvas is necessary. But the more canvases that we do, there's potential for lost evidence. We have wind, we have weather. There's numerous environmental factors that affect the apprehension and discovery of evidence. And actually, so I don't know if people know this, but some people think, the smoking gun, if you actually fire that firearm, that will close the case. And in many cases, when you get a firearm, sometimes it's very difficult to get DNA and prints off a gun. Very difficult, especially with weather, how many people may have handled that firearm. So getting DNA and fingerprints off of a firearm itself is very tough, depending on also the material and the texture of that firearm. So I don't think that the information that they're putting out is completely accurate. And I do agree at this point, if they do know the identity of the perpetrator, that they shouldn't release it until they've exhausted all police operations and all police capabilities to make this apprehension. Once they exhaust and get to that point, if they can't close this case and make an actual apprehension, then they're going to have to seek out help from the public. And it's going to come down to eyewitnesses. Someone saw that picture without the mask, and someone out there knows the identity of this perpetrator. So they have to take a close look into the life of the victim to find out who he knew that may be a potential threat. Did he have a lover? Did he have a wife? We have to look into all these things to find out. So it's really going to come down to the victim. His life, hit a deep dive into the victim's life, the forensics on the phone that were found at the scene. These are going to be particulars to find the actual perpetrator.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think immediately, and it has to be a multifaceted approach, right? Like, but I think ultimately at this point, the guy's in the wind. You have to do the victimology on the victim. You have to look at the victim. You should be focused on the victim. Not saying that there shouldn't be a street module to investigate the actual crime and where he fled and how he fled. That should be happening at the same time. This is pulling a lot of resources away from public safety in New York City as well. But the NYPD still has a decent amount of people to do that and the budget large enough to do that. So, it has to be a multifaceted approach. But I think, the FBI is obviously investigating this as well. I agree with you. I think one thing that I believe, and I don't know if you believe the same thing, I believe that there was outside influences. I don't believe, although this person acted alone on the street that day, I'm not sure that there wasn't an outside person feeding information. Because if it's true that the person took a bus from Atlanta a month ago and was waiting in New York, that means he was waiting 1 month for this press conference to happen. When was that press conference announced on the company's website? I don't know. I didn't look at it. There is the flyer out there. A couple of people have posted it. When was that posted? How did he know when Brian Thompson was going to arrive there? How did he know Brian Thompson was going to be by himself? I believe there was an outside influence. So technically he had help, maybe not on the street at that moment in time, but somebody behind the scenes. What do you think? Do you think this was a lone wolf, or do you think that there was help there?
No, I'm confident that there's someone or some people out there helping him. It's very tough to carry out. I agree with you, John. By the way, it's a great point. It's very tough to carry out a crime like this by yourself. I would think that you need help. Ultimately, what it comes down to also, what is this perpetrator going to need? Food and shelter. So he has to find himself a place to stay and get access to money to actually maneuver, whether it's a subway or a bus, and not leave an actual fingerprint. So I'm pretty confident that there is someone or some people out there that are knowledgeable about this crime and that are harboring him somewhere. He needs somewhere to hide out. And it appears that this potential person of interest, this perpetrator, is on the move. I've highly doubt that this actual perpetrator hit a particular state and it's touchdown and he stayed. I'm pretty confident this person of interest is going to be on the move until this dies down. I think that this person has several people helping him. In order to be on the move in that manner, you have to have several people helping you. So absolutely, I think that's a great observation. He may be carrying it out physically alone, but there's definitely people behind the curtain helping him. There's no doubt in my mind. Again, I said this from the beginning. Without any knowledge, any context to this actual heinous crime, I'm confident that this person is residing out of state, but they do have full, intimate knowledge of New York City. To maneuver in New York City in that manner, you have to know and how to maneuver in New York City. You have to know the subway system. You have to know buses. You have to know that Central Park goes from 59th Street to 110th Street. So I'm pretty confident also. What do you think? I'm pretty confident that the person of interest had either a set of clothes in the park or a set of clothes in the backpack to change. So I'm confident that he actually changed his clothes in Central Park. And I think that's the reason for going through Central Park. What are your thoughts on that?
Before we get into that, we got 1,008 people on here. If you guys could just do us a favor, like and subscribe to the channel. It's just New York's finest, retired on Unfiltered podcast, the finest Unfiltered for short. We're talking about the manhunt to find the murderer of the UnitedHealtcare CEO. So I agree with you, Eric. I think that there was definitely a change of clothes had in the backpack. I also think it was well planned out on his exact movements of where he was going to go. I don't think that he was just on the street that morning. When I see this guy, I'm going to kill him and figure it out from there. I don't think that at all. I think he had a clear motive of where he was going to go. And I think we've seen that clear as day. Directly after the murder, he basically disregarded everybody that was on the street that day, and he headed in a direction. He knew exactly where that bike was that he left. It didn't appear to be an e-bike to me from what I saw in that video. Video's grainy again. So, and like I said, anything we're seeing on that video, I'm not sure of it at all, and that relates to the firearm that was used, the gun that was being ridden, the clothes on his back, because clearly we keep seeing facial features that are different. We see different masks being on the individual. We see different backpacks being on the individual. So I'm not even sure which stills are accurate other than the grainy video that we saw where Brian Thompson was murdered.
So I'm glad that you brought up the grainy video, right? So a lot of people have been talking in the media, a lot of experts about the different descriptions that have been provided to the media, right? Chief Joe Kenny provided a description, a dark jacket, along with a great backpack to the public. And a lot of people in the media, these so-called experts, have been saying, how can the police department give the wrong information? Apparently, the jacket is either a cream color or green. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. First of all, on the onset of a preliminary investigation, John, you and I both know, doing anti-crime, you do a lot of CCTV capture, watching some of these videos. They're extremely grainy. There's different technology, different capabilities. There's different types of video. Some are better than others. I mean, I've been to some stores, some bodegas throughout the city where you're like, wow, you saw some CCTV video. It was amazing. I mean, you could see the pimple on someone's face. You could see the pimple on someone's nose. And then sometimes you see some video like, oh my God, you're lucky if you can see a silhouette. So to say that, it's the wrong description, it was very grainy video. They did their best. That part, I will support I'll support the leadership when it comes to that. I mean, Joe Kenny put out the information, the best that they had. This is grainy video. As I said, some are better than others. But I'm pretty confident also that this wasn't the first time that this person of interest was at this particular location. There had to be dry runs done. So the NYPD, and along with the FBI, is going to have to spend extensive amount of hours going back days, maybe even weeks, to try to find someone that appears to be the same subject, lurking around that area. Because I'm pretty confident that a dry run or maybe several dry run tests had to be performed to actually carry this out.
No, I agree. And Labro brings up a point here. He says, why is nobody mentioning the lady that was off to the side next to the glass door? She looked directly at the gunman and bolted. So the lady was there. She was drinking coffee. For those of you that review this video of the murder, you clearly see her. She's off to the side. She's drinking coffee. There was also what appears to be an executive protection security member in that vehicle. It looked to be a Suburban with the headlights on and the taillights on. You could see someone was in that car and puts his foot on the brake as the murder's happening. That appears to be some type of executive security, or it could also be some type of transportation, like a luxury black car service. I just see a lot. I've been around the city a long time. Appeared to be maybe someone in the executive protection field sitting in that car as well. So those two people are going to have a clearer picture of what actually occurred that day on the street. Now, I'm sure if you're that lady, you do not want public attention at this point, right? And I don't think law enforcement is going to let the public know exactly what she did or did not see. And because one, it would endanger her life significantly, and two, it could potentially hurt the case. So there are things, I'm going to say right now, I'm 100% positive that there are things that the NYPD knows and the FBI knows that the media and the public do not know. And that's, and that's for a lot of different reasons, but particularly when it relates to that lady, when it relates to whoever was in that vehicle, that is definitely being done for their safety, not only to keep them safe from the individual who actually committed the murder on the street that day, but potentially whoever else was involved in this.
There's no doubt about it. When it comes to an investigation, especially high profile like this, some information has to be transparent and released to the public, and some information has to be held close to the chest for investigative purposes. So absolutely, I agree with you. Now, the other question is, John, it's very possible. It's possible that woman that was standing there was either a potential witness, or it's possible she was a potential accomplice also, because of the position that she happened to be there at the same time as the actual perpetrator or person of interest. It's very possible that person was strategically positioned themselves to actually identify when the CEO, when Brian Thompson, is actually present in the right spot, because it could be calculated of where the best shot would be taken, of what position the actual person of interest would be in, and also the actual victim. So at this point, this person could be a witness and this person could be an accomplice. When it goes down to the, I think also other evidence, I think at this point that I think the police department is definitely aware of, and what significance it is in this case that is held to the chest, is the coffee cup, the water. I know that's been something that's been discussed a lot at Starbucks. So in order to identify and determine that, yes, he's the one that actually made the purchase, there had to be witnesses also in Starbucks that identified that had an interaction with this person when they were making the purchase. So how did they make the purchase? Did they make the purchase by cash? Was a credit card used? Which barista actually provided the coffee? Was anything said? Did they hear an accent? What type of transaction? So these are key elements that are going to help in this case. And the details have not been released to the public. So I'm sure the details of this have been uncovered. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm sure. Listen, like I said, there's definitely thoughts. There's definitely things that they know that they're not telling us. Jen brings up a point here. The monopoly money is because he was monopolizing people's lives and profiting. So she's saying the money found in the bag was a clear message. Other thing that people keep asking, is he a professional? And that was when we reported on it. We were actually on a live discussing something else when this occurred. And, I myself and Eric both said the use of the word professional is very objective. What do you mean by professional? Was he hired? Is that just a professional? Or does he have the skills of John Wick? Does that make you a professional? In my contention, if he was hired and he carried it out, it was a professional hit. Now, if he's sloppy or not, it's also subjective, because I said, well, to me, depending on how quickly he's apprehended or not apprehended, depends on how professional he is to me, because I believe that if he got away in such a prolific murder in public in New York City, that city that's completely camered up, and you're able to get out of there in 24 hours and get out of there, you're going to be pretty professional in my eyes. I don't care how sloppy the initial hit was or wasn't. People are going back and forth. He would have got closer if he was a professional. The gun wouldn't have jammed. Some people are saying it was a single shotgun. I'm going to say right now, I don't care if he was hired, if he wasn't hired. The fact that he was able to get away just makes him a professional in my eyes. Do you think that this was a professional hit, Eric? Do you think this person is a professional, whatever that means?
Well, before I go into that, I'm just going to say shout out to Juju, who actually donated some coffee and donuts to the podcast at $1.99, of course, with a stupid comment. White on white crime, question mark. MAGA on MAGA violence, question mark. Seriously? So because they're white, they actually care about America? That's the most ridiculous thing. That's actually racist-driven yourself. So enough of that. But I think it's extremely subjective. We both had said that, right? We had segued from one of our podcasts, I think it was last week, when this became breaking news. And I can say this. It's extremely subjective on the term professional. I do think this is a professional hit in the sense, I don't think this is a hired gun, a hired hitman, but it's professional in the sense that the person is proficient in a firearm and has the intelligence to maneuver this, to actually carry out this homicide and actually escape police immediate apprehension. So it was professional enough in that manner that was this, or I'm sorry, let me just backtrack that for a second. I like to refer to this as the Karate Kid effect, right? Just like the movie Karate Kid we've all seen with Daniel LaRusso, played by Ralph Macchio. And when you watch the Karate Kid, who's the bad guy? Who's the bad boy in that? Right? Is it, what was his name in the movie? Johnny. Is it Johnny? Was Johnny the bad boy in that movie? Was Daniel the good kid? But if you see on YouTube, they had put a spin on it, right? Where Daniel was actually the bad kid, and Johnny was actually the one trying to defend him and his friends and trying to defend his girlfriend. So it's all subjective. It's how you look at it. Was this sloppy by the appearance of it? Because some people say it was sloppy. Or was it professional? So I think it's extremely subjective when we watch this. But I would say this is a professional in the sense that this person took the time out. It's obvious that there was dry runs. This was tested. This was premeditated. The firearm use was premeditated, and it was targeted. So in that sense, it is professional.
Yeah, so Knock One Time says, this is not a career bad guy. Also seems we know a lot about this guy without knowing a lot about this guy. Hard to believe they don't have an ID on him. Maybe they do. Great question. I personally believe they do have an ID on the person. And I think they've had it for a few days. It's my personal belief. I don't have any inside information that that's the case. Eric, what do you think?
Oh, I said it before earlier in this episode. Absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind that the NYPD has and knowingly in their possession the identity of the shooter. Not only do they have the images, but I believe they actually have the pedigree information, the identity of this person, potentially where they live, family members, and I think they haven't disclosed that information right now because they're zeroing in, trying to find out not only and apprehend the actual perpetrator, but it goes into what we said earlier, John. We both believe that there are someone or some people helping him. So I believe that before they make the actual apprehension, they're going to close in and find out all the people and identify who helped him actually commit this heinous act, who actually helped him carry it out, and to decipher who's actually a potential witness and who's actually a potential perpetrator in assisting him and facilitating the sexual crime. So I do believe that's part of this investigation. I believe that's why they haven't released it. Also, I believe that they want to make sure they wrap everything up and zero in and make sure that they have a good case when they present this to the district attorney. They don't want to have any holes and this person actually gets away with it. So they're going to make sure this is wrapped up. So there's no doubt in my mind, I will put my last dollar, that the NYPD along with the FBI and the ATF has the identity of this actual perpetrator. Shout out to Driver's Seat, $10, coffee and donuts. Here we go. Was the CEO part of insider trading of his own stocks? He reportedly made $11 million. Pelosi allegedly sold her stocks in that company too. It's very possible. Again, this is conjecture. This is speculation. Was this a lover's quarrel? Was this because it's an insurance company and someone did not get insurance? Is this about big pharma? Is this about trading? Is this threats? Speculation. We don't know at this point. But these are definitely things that are being looked at. So that's why the NYPD, FBI, and ATF is working tirelessly. This is taking man hours. This is a lot of work to not only make the apprehension, but to make sure this is a solid case. Crazy 10-7, shout out to you, $4.99. Thank you so much. Coffee and donuts. Here we go. I want a FOIA of the expense report for Juju's donation. Or did that come out of the embroidery fund? I like to know. That's a great question also. Juju, did that come out of your own pocket? Or was that from the NYPD? But you know what, Juju? Thank you. I think your comment is absolutely ridiculous. I think it's stupid. But what else should we expect from you? Well, thank you for the coffee. We appreciate it.
Yeah, so back to driver's seat. The CEO was being probed by the DOJ. Apparently him and several other executives, I think, dumped about, I think it was 50 million or 100 million in stock. He was, I believe, set to make the most money off of that, and it was a probe. We don't really know much else about that. But, so we know that that's happening. We know that that's around that. The COVID Select Committee had actually just released a report and, kind of had a lot of negative information about healthcare companies at the time. Healthcare is also a major issue in America right now, right? There's a lot of people that don't have healthcare or don't have proper healthcare, right? Our cost of medicine's exorbitant. The cost of medical care is exorbitant. And what we see often is when you become sick, the insurance companies do not want to cover you. They'll take your money when you're perfectly healthy, but when it comes time for them to have to pay out for catastrophic events, catastrophic things, they don't want to get involved in it. And we saw a lot of stuff happening around anesthesia recently in different states where medical companies didn't even want to cover that. It's like basic stuff. So there's a lot of hate around the healthcare industry, around the medicine industry. So, he was apparently estranged from his wife where they were living separately. So there's a lot of different avenues that it could be. I mean, the possibilities are completely endless. Never mind the fact that the guy's a CEO of a company that employs thousands of people. I mean, so any one of those thousands of people could be angered with him for anything. I mean, so the suspects are endless. It's basically anything at this point. I think the only thing that we could really rule out, and I don't even want to say we could rule it out 100%. I think we could just rule it out. The majority is that this wasn't an act of violence on New York City streets that day. It appears to be targeted. It appears to be a targeted event. I'm telling you right now, like based upon what we know right now, I wouldn't be quick to rule anything out. I just wouldn't be.
I'm not sure, shout out to Labro. So I'm not sure if he or she, we don't know who Labro is, right? I don't know if this is a joke or you're actually being serious, but I think this is actually a great point. Brother, I'm gonna shout this out because I think it is a good point. Why are they calling him light skinned? I mean, we are changing everything in the media right now because of DEI, because of he's absolutely right. I didn't hear the person of interest referred to as Caucasian or white male. We keep hearing light skin. That's a great point. Everything's being changed right now in this whole DEI movement around the world. I mean, we even have the police commissioner who can't say men and women. She says women and men. I mean, everything's getting changed. Why is it light skin? I agree with you. Why are we not saying a white male or Caucasian perpetrator? There's no doubt in my mind this person is white, unless, I don't know. Maybe we don't know what white is anymore, right? I mean, I don't know. But I think that's a great point. Absolutely. I mean, I think it's silly. It's silly that we can't actually say a Caucasian perpetrator or a white male.
Yeah, so Jardoni Jonakovich says he got out at the 77th Street Central Park West. If he got rid of the gun in Central Park, he threw it in the reservoir, not in the Bessedia Pond. You got that, Kaz? So, listen, they are still doing a grid search of the park, and they currently have divers in Central Park looking for the weapon in those exact areas. So I think that's a great point to point out, and we appreciate you for weighing in on that. So, yeah, we haven't – I mean, Central Park's huge. I mean, and even doing a grid search, to me, it's not completely foolproof. It's not. depending who's looking, how they're looking, the orders from up top, how they often switch when you have too many chiefs and not enough Indians could be a problem. I think we need to hone in and find 100%. I think that, especially, and then if he throws in the reservoir problem. So I do think if he did dump the gun at some point, they will recover it. Let's see. Let's see what happens today. I think more information will be dropped today, a little bit later in the day. But yeah, I think that's a great point. We appreciate you for pointing that out.
Well, I think in a case like this, right? Again, immediately when this case came about and it was a shock and it was high profile, obviously there's a lot of information out there when it comes to Brian Thompson. He's a CEO of UnitedHealtcare. So I started to do some research on Brian Thompson, and I couldn't find any dirt on him. So in a case like this, we can't find any dirt other than the probe about this money with these stocks. Hey, listen, there's people in the NYPD that are being probed right now. So you're innocent until you're proven guilty. But other than that, really couldn't find much stuff. So we have to look at the victim right away. And when it comes to a case like this, who's the first person to look at? And it's unfortunate because she may have nothing to do with this, but the first person that should be looked at is the wife. That's absolutely who will be the first suspect. They have to either rule her as a suspect or rule her out. So absolutely, right now the wife is being probed. Everything is going to be looked at when it comes to the wife. And I will say, I'm not saying that she's guilty, but it has to be an observation made. It has to be put in the back of everyone's mind. And everyone does react differently to the death of a loved one, especially such a heinous crime like this. But I thought the wife's behavior, her demeanor, was quite peculiar when she spoke about her husband's death. I thought her behavior was quite peculiar. I don't know if she's involved in this or not. Obviously, she's going to be looked at. There's going to be a heavy, deep probe on the wife. But I did think that her demeanor was off. It didn't seem, as someone that lost a loved one. Again, we don't know what's going on with their marriage. Everyone's different on they handle things. I mean, these are professional people. They might want to have a certain demeanor with the public. I'm not sure, but I thought her demeanor was off. What did you think about the wife?
I didn't see an interview with her, but like I said initially when it came on, she's my first suspect. So it just always is whenever I see a hit like that. Guy's got a lot of money. I don't know. Did she want to run off to the Dominican Republic with the pool boy? I mean, these things have to be ruled out. How was the marriage? What was going on? When you see targeted hits, I mean, it's unfortunate. Even if you had a happy marriage and there's nothing there, she's a suspect. I mean, sorry, it just is what it is, and vice versa. I mean, that's the same thing. Whenever somebody's married, it's something that you have to look at and you have to rule out. And at this point, like I said, I don't think we've ruled out anything. I think that the NYPD or the FBI, or possibly both, have this individual ID'd. I don't think they want that to leak out. I think there is a manhunt underway, maybe even internationally at this point. Probably, I would say more than likely internationally at this point. And, I think at this point we really can't rule anything out until he's apprehended, until he is debriefed, until all the pieces, all the dots are connected. Scooch says, given the difference in jackets, masks, etc., there could be two persons involved. One to do the hit, one to redirect tracking afterward. 100%. I mean, it's 100% possible that more than one. In my opinion, it's more than likely that multiple people are involved. Not only in the planning of it, but in the actual operational management afterwards, and the escape plan. A lot of people are pointing out to, there's people that do robberies and they have 1 million people dress up just like they did just to confuse the police so they can't find them. Coming out of Atlanta a month ago, if that's true, I mean, I'm not going to lie. That brings me right to Antifa, and I don't know why they're involved in it, but it's just, maybe they're involved because they do professional hits. I don't know, but that's when I hear Atlanta, I think Antifa. I don't know why. It's just something that happens with me. I don't know.
So, first of all, shout out Dave Savella, Scooch. I think that's a great observation, which is what I was talking about earlier in this podcast about deflections. I think that the coffee cup and the water and the bike might have been action. So I think that's a fantastic point that you made, Scooch, because that deflection, distraction could have been actually a different perpetrator, a different person of interest to actually deflect and detract from this investigation, right? To actually provide DNA and prints of someone else to spend time on an actual person of interest that's not actually the shooter, but definitely it could be an accomplice to distract and detract from this investigation. I think that's a great point. Spot on, Scooch. I was thinking about deflection, distraction, and where that may be, and I think you actually nailed it where the distraction and deflection could be. So I think that's a great point, John, about Antifa. When I hear Atlanta, what comes to mind immediately to me is movement, possibly getting on a plane. So Atlanta is the busiest and it's the most traveled hub airport in this entire country. Anyone wants to look it up, it has the most connecting flights. If you look it up, Atlanta is the busiest airport in the entire country, and that's where most of the connecting flights are. I don't know why. So it could be for that reason, John, because of the nature of that airport, maybe of getting on a plane there to maneuver around. I do think, and if that's the case, there's no doubt in my mind that this perpetrator, this person of interest, has significant help. We're the Captain Now, new friend to the podcast. Never heard the name before. Shout out to you. Thank you so much for watching, being a friend to the podcast. $1.99, coffee and donuts. Case has serial killer vibes. Is he in country? Well, we don't know at this point. Serial killer, I don't know. We haven't heard any potential evidence to lead in that direction. If there was something that would indicate this was a serial killer, I do believe that information would be released to the public because now we have other people at risk. I don't think that other people are at risk right now of being harmed. I think this was an isolated and a targeted actual murder. So I don't think people are at risk right now for this actual perpetrator unless they are become an obstacle for this person of interest in maneuvering and escaping the police. I mean, listen, Whitey Bulger managed to escape apprehension for years. It took years to get Whitey Bulger. Eventually, he was apprehended in California. So I know some people want to believe that in this day and age that you can't escape capture, and you absolutely can. With the right people on your side, and if you maneuver properly, it absolutely can be done. Are they out of the country? I highly doubt it. I would put my money that they're still in the country. But again, when I think Atlanta, I think of someone that possibly got on a plane to go somewhere else in the country. And it could be Minnesota.
Why do you doubt they're out of the country?
Well, I do doubt that they're out of the country right now because of the vast knowledge that they had of New York City and the amount of time it took. I'm sure right now that would be also someone getting on a plane right now to go out of the country would be a huge red flag with that description. I would assume immediately that Port Authority and FBI would be checking all these airports at this point. But it could be. But based on what I see in the case right now, I don't think so. But it could be. What do you think?
See, I disagree. I was like, as soon as it happened, my wife's like, "Where do you think he is?" I said, "I think he's flying over the pond into Europe as we speak." You know, so you know, I mean, if you're gonna conduct a hit in this fashion, I would think you're gonna leave the country. If you are a pro, if you are a legit pro, you know, you brought up the point about Atlanta too, and that actually, I didn't even think about that. It is a major hub in the United States. I didn't even think about that at all. But so is New York City. You know, you could fly internationally New York City, no problem. So he could have flew right there as well. He didn't have to fly into Atlanta to take the bus there. But I think very easily, you could have changed into a suit and glasses, get onto an international flight at JFK Airport, get yourself to JFK Airport, and you had a scheduled flight internationally to go wherever that you had booked for several months, or at least a month. How are they stopping you? No one's going to know. You're out. You're gone. You know, I don't know that person did that, but I think that the possibility is definitely there. I wouldn't say that he's in this country or he's not in this country. I'm just thinking if this is professional and you want to get out of the circle of where they're coming after you. So you're either going into rural areas of the country or you're getting the hell out of it. You're getting it right out of you're getting right out of the country until things die down. That's how that's me. I don't know. I could be wrong.
I mean, I think it's definitely. I just want to circle back to it and say that it's not impossible, right? But I know a lot of people are saying that the person of interest looks potentially Russian or Polish. But if this person had a foreign passport, they would have to show that passport to customs. And as high profile this case was, you have to assume that immediately customs was notified throughout the entire country. And I would think if this person was going out of the country, it would be more likely to leave from JFK. And the reason why I say that is because there are more foreigners leaving from JFK outside the country than there is, even though Atlanta is the biggest hub and most connecting flights throughout the entire country. But I would say New York, you have more people leaving JFK to go outside the country. That's why I thought that if they're going to leave outside the country, they would probably go from JFK and it would be immediate before customs can actually vet this actual person. So it would be kind of tough getting your passport through, but not impossible. So that's my thoughts on that. Again, this is just conjecture. This is all speculation. We're all making speculation based on what we believe. I mean, none of us know, but I think these are great points. I mean, Scooch brought up a great point. Someone brought up a great point here about monopoly money, being metaphoric about monopolizing the company. So there's so many observations. So you can see right now, just in a conversation, this podcast, all the angles that we're talking about. And what's extremely difficult and cumbersome for the NYPD, along with FBI and ATF, they actually have to explore every angle that we just discussed. They're actually going to have to explore those angles in depth. So it's a lot of work. It's tedious. Sometimes, John, you probably did it yourself, watching some of those CCTV videos, having to go back hours before the actual event. It's tiresome. It's boring. It's a lot of work. God bless the men and women that are detectives from the NYPD or any agency. God bless you for what you do. VSS Torres, $10 at a podcast, coffee and donuts. The authorities know who the guy is, and the wife should be heavily looked at. Yes. Juju, popular and electoral vote. Feel the checks. The cheeks get clapped hard by freedom. You collectivist trash can. Shout out VSS Torres.
Absolutely. So Mikey G, metal detective in Long Island, former NYPD detective who handled some prolific murder cases in New York City. This is what Mikey G's got to say. He says, if you actually believe the NYPD detectives are handling this case now, you are sadly mistaken. The FBI is in charge. So that's coming from somebody who's done it, So I would say that is credible information there, people. And obviously what we've seen come out from the FBI is, like I said, they're offering a $50,000 reward and the NYPD is offering a $5,000 reward. So I would say that it is the FBI. And, I would always defer to someone with the experience in it. And I know Mikey G has more experience than myself in handling homicide cases. So I agree with you, Mike. And the other reason I believe that is because, again, I don't believe the person's in New York, even in New York State any longer. So they're going to look for someone that has more national reach than the NYPD, which is going to be the FBI. So let's play this video that comes out from CNN. I believe we hear the police commissioner talk on this. Let's see what she's got to say.
And also the chief of detectives who is running this entire investigation. And some significant new information that I can report now is that the suspect, the NYPD believes the suspect is no longer in New York City. They've been able to track his movement. And what they say is that on that bike, remember, there's that video from 85th Street, West 85th Street, where he comes down the road, makes a right. They now say that they see the suspect get in a taxi cab and head north. They also say that they have a lot of evidence that they're still working through. Here's some of what they told me.
What has led your investigators to believe that this individual has left New York City?
Our detectives are doing a very, very extensive video canvas. We're working from the Hilton Hotel, from the incident itself, all the way to Uptown Manhattan. So we have our perpetrator leaves the Hilton Hotel after the incident takes place. We have them getting on a bicycle and riding into Central Park. We then later pick him up on 77th Street, exiting the park on Central Park West, still with the bicycle. Eventually, we have him on 86th Street and Columbus Avenue, walking. He loses the bike. And then from there, we have him in a taxi cab, and the taxi cab takes him up to 178th Street and Broadway, which, as we know, is a Port Authority bus center. Those buses are interstate buses. That's why we believe he may have left New York City.
Do you know what bus he got on, where that bus was going?
We're working into that, and then we're looking into that now. It's a very busy bus terminal. We want to make sure we have the right bus, but we're working through that right now. It's all new information.
And actually, now as we speak, we have a huge canvas going on in Central Park. We still have not found the backpack. And so we're doing a full sweep of Central Park to find that backpack, which we believe he dropped in Central Park. We're using manpower, but we're also using our drones.
I want to get back to that quickly, because this is new information. I think it's important for New York City residents certainly to know that this individual is no longer, you believe he's no longer.
We said we have reason to believe he's no longer in New York City.
That I assume is based on video.
We have video of him entering the Port Authority bus terminal. We don't have any video of him exiting, so we believe he may have gotten on a bus.
Okay, we don't know what bus.
No, not at this time.
Did he say the cab driver, were you able to interview the cab driver, the taxi driver that took him to the...
We want to be careful not to get too far in the weeds of this investigation. It is an active, ongoing investigation.
Are you ready to...
So what do you think about that, bro?
Listen, it's probably the most professional appearance we've seen from the NYPD in a very long time. I think they provided as much information that they could. Again, I think there's information that they're being transparent with. And I think there's information that they're actually close to the chest. I think there's a lot of information and details that they have on this case that they did not provide. And I think even at that point when they did this interview, that they had information even further detailed on this case that they did not provide. Mikey G, Long Island detective. Yeah, shout out to you, brother. I agree. There's no doubt in my mind that at this point, along with the ATF, that FBI is in charge of this case. As high profile it is, and this actual person of interest is believed to have fled the state, there's no doubt about it. There's no doubt in my mind that the NYPD is in a supportive role. Now, I heard that the NYPD is offering up to $10,000. I know you said $5,000, up to $10,000, but the FBI is offering $50,000, which is significant in the role of the FBI in this case. So there's no doubt about that the FBI is in charge. And I do believe even if the NYPD has the information to make these apprehension, it's going to be the FBI that takes credit for it in this particular case. Again, nice appearance by the police department. Far more professional what we've seen. I will say kudos to the new police commissioner when it comes to her being a leader. And this is so far, right? This is in the infancy of her as the commissioner, of utilizing the proper personnel to give the information, right? Chief Joe Kenny is the proper mouthpiece to actually present this information. So with that, I'll give her kudos. She's not trying to say that she knows all this information and present it. She's allowing Chief Kenny, who should be the one presenting this case, to actually provide that information.
Pep Leather Lab. You guys see the data on UnitedHealtcare claim refusals? 30% highest in the nation, 37% highest in the nation. Are we really surprised? Listen, it's the day it happened. The day it happened, I got a piece of mail from UnitedHealtcare denying one of my claims. It's not funny, but it is. I was just like, what the hell? I was like, I was going on the news that day too. I was about to go on the news, and I'm like looking at, I'm like grabbing I'm like rushing in my house to get ready, and I grabbed the mail and I opened the UnitedHealthcare thing, and I'm like laughing, but it doesn't mean that, it doesn't mean that that's the cause of it. Like I said, the amount of suspects and the amount of possibilities at this point are endless. I think what you're hearing from the NYPD here is, if you're not picking up on it, is they know a lot more than they're putting on, right? They know a lot more. I mean, even when she's saying, we believe he dropped a backpack. This is pre them finding the backpack with the Monopoly money, this interview. But they knew that backpack was in there, right? They knew they probably already had it as they're on here talking about it. So there's a lot of information that's not being put out. Unfortunately, it's like the news keeps calling, right? They want me to go on, and I'm like, we don't know anything. I don't know what you want me to like. It's basically like circling the wagon. It's like, yeah, we really don't know anything at this point. They're looking at this, they're looking at that. I know a lot of people are mad. I've been watching a lot of people have been sending me some stupid comments from all these people. Who gets these people on the news? Why do they have retired lieutenants and not detectives? And why do they have this guy and not that guy? And I think it's important. I think people want to hear the perspective from officers, from people who are familiar with New York City, are familiar with procedures in the NYPD, and have been on scenes like this and what happened. And I think they want all different angles of it. I don't think they just want it from a detective's point of view. I think they also want it from a supervisor's point of view. I think they want it from people who have knowledge. So obviously anybody that worked in the NYPD, media outlets are going to call like, hey, what do you think about this? Just your thoughts. And I think the public wants to hear about that. If you're mad that you're not the person getting called, I'm sorry, maybe you should clean up your act a little.
I tell you what, listen, I find fault with all insurance companies. Insurance companies, it's a battle. I mean, I've experienced in 2012 with Hurricane Sandy, I lost my home. The amount of damage was so significant, and FEMA had to step in because all the red tape when it came to insurance. I had homeowners insurance and flood insurance, right? And when it came to flood insurance, they said, well, we don't cover structural, right? So when I went to the homeowners insurance, they said, well, it's caused by a flood. So it was back and forth, all the red tape, and FEMA had to step in. And when it comes to medical insurance, it's a nightmare. Is this in-network? Is it out-of-network? Are they billing you for inpatient, outpatient? It's always a disaster. But when it comes to this case, yes, our medical insurance is, insane. Do they not cover stuff? And when they don't cover, if you paid out of pocket, good luck on the appeal. Good luck getting your money back. But Brian Thompson is not the only CEO of UnitedHealtcare. Why Brian Thompson? I don't think I would say he's, what is he, like the 10th CEO? He's not even at the top. Why not go to the top guy then? If it's really about that, that's why I think this, potentially could be a deflection. So is it really about the CEO when it comes to this? Is it something more personal? We don't know, but I do suspect that this is all a deflection, because why not go after the top guy? And clearly, we heard that potentially there's threats out there, but clearly there's not that much of a significant, legitimate threat because he didn't have any security. Driver's seat, shout out to you, $5 to the podcast, coffee and donuts. That area is now teeming with illegals from mostly Africa, South America, Ukraine, and Eastern Europe selling drugs, counterfeit handbags, and sex. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. No doubt about it. Thank you so much for the coffee donut. You're spot on. But, John, that's why I see that potentially what's written on the ammunition as a deflection for that reason. So I want to ask you this. I want to segue into just a question. So I saw the response of the company, and UnitedHealtcare advised their employees not to speak to the media in regards to this case. So what are your thoughts on that? They were advised, and it says it was reported they were advised not to speak to the media. And you and I both know internally, I'm sure it was, don't speak to the media. So what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, listen, I've been around a long time and I've seen a lot of things in the media happen. Been around all different aspects, both being in policing, living in neighborhoods where prolific events have happened. The media, especially in a media frenzy, they have a way of taking little things you say out of context and making them big things. So I think it's more of like, I agree. I don't think they want anyone speaking to the media for their own personal reasons. But also if I am in this moment in time and my company's coming under fire and I want to respect the murder of my employee, I'm also going to advise my employees not to speak to the media at this point. I'm going to advise against it. I am. And it's not because your opinion doesn't matter. It's because I'm kind of protecting you because you don't know. There was a murder occurred around the block from my house when I was a kid, and the media was all over it. It was all over it. It was all over everything. And the media grabs my father as he's like coming home from work that day, or he was like coming from the store, and he like does this quick impromptu interview on the news, and he's on the news, and my mother was furious at him, and she was like, you know what the news does? They grab idiots from the neighborhood so that they could show and make us all look idiots. So they saw you coming, they figured you'd be the perfect person, and you made us all look like a bunch of idiots. Like, don't grab the news, because they're not going to put out everything you say. They're just going to grab a clip of it. And so I think that's the fear of the company, is that they're going to grab something, as well as, create more media buzz. Keep the media buzz going. You're going to keep it alive. If you feed the media, the buzz is going to continue. I mean, this media buzz is going to be forever. And then, we already see the conspiracy theories are coming out about this, as well as, like I said, the true crime people all over this. Suspects not even apprehended already. And they weigh in. They go deep on crimes that happened in the past for years. This crime just happened, and it's already started. The buzz is there. So I think they're trying not to feed the people. But again, it's your right as American to do and say as you please.
We're an hour and a half into the podcast. I want to thank the friends, listeners. There's a lot of trolls on here today also. We love the trolls. We love the haters. Your opinions are important also. This is a space where we allow all criticism and all opinions. So like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. If you're on X, please repost it, share it out. Build this podcast, build this network. If you like what you see. If you don't like what you see, you don't like what you hear, you know what? We'll hear your opinion also. Your opinion is important. Opposition beats opportunity. Again, when it comes down to this case, John, I think this is a very significant, high-profile case. I do think the FBI is in charge. I think there's a lot of details that are held close to the chest. But when it comes to the NYPD, especially with this administration, the question is this. Is the NYPD holding information close to their chest because it's beneficial to the investigation? Or are they holding information close to their chest because this has been the least transparent administration? And is it to protect Eric Adams in this perception versus truth when it comes to crime numbers? Because as we spoke before, shortly after this insane, heinous crime, Eric Adams was boasting about crime being down in the city. So in your opinion, John, and that's all we have right now is opinion and speculation, do you believe that the information that's not provided by the NYPD, along with the new police commissioner, is for the benefit of the investigation or the benefit of this administration?
I think everything that comes out from the Eric Adams administration is to benefit Eric Adams. And I think, we see that time and time again, right? Like I just, I'm not buying the whole Eric Adams all of a sudden determine that the open borders are bad and that he's pro public safety now. I'm not, and that the Department of Justice is weaponized and the FBI is weaponized. I'm just not buying it. I'm not buying it after his indictment. It's just, I think everything, the attacks that have came against this administration, against this podcast, against myself, the slanderous claims that continuously come out, everything is perception management, right? Everything is perception management. It's always been perception management. Like I said, the Brian Thompson was murdered. And before the NYPD even put out a press conference, Eric Adams is tweeting about how crime is down in New York City. It's the safest big city in America. I mean, disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. So anything that's coming out, the NYPD, if there's something that's politicized, it's the NYPD. The NYPD has been heavily politicized under the Eric Adams administration. And, I saw it again over this weekend, right? This weekend, I go on David Harris Jr. show on Newsmax. And what happens immediately upon me going on that show? Immediately upon that, all of a sudden, I'm a racist. I'm getting all these fake accounts coming after me, trying to slander me, defame me. And that's coming out from the Eric Adams administration. That's not just trolls. No, it's people in high ranks in the Eric Adams administration using burner accounts to try to attack my integrity and try to smear and slander my name and my career because they can't argue with the things that I'm saying. So anything that's coming out from this administration, anything, literally anything that comes out from this administration, the sole thing, the number one thing is how does this make Eric Adams appear in the media? That's it. And then everything else falls behind that. That's the number one thing.
Absolutely. I want to go back to what we spoke about earlier about the advisement from UnitedHealtcare for their employees not to speak to the media. I get it. What you brought up is a fantastic point. I do think there's a component that they are trying to protect their people from potentially saying something that could cause them to be probed or just put themselves in a precarious position or say something that just is an unprofessional or appearance of impropriety for the company. But I also believe that there is another aspect. This is just conjecture and just speculation. So I do think that there might be some fear that someone will speak of why Brian Thompson does not have a security detail. Again, is the blame? I do think he should have had a security detail, and there's absolutely some blame there. Is the blame on Brian Thompson himself for not having a security detail? Did he not want one? Or is the blame on the company? So we don't know that now. I find it hard-pressed to believe that someone is high profile, a high-valued man in a position who has a substantial amount of net worth, who traveled from Minnesota to New York for an important conference, does not have any security. I mean, we see all the time. Cops in retirement get jobs like this all the time where they drive around, they drive people that have money and people that are not necessarily high profile as a CEO, but just people that have an extreme amount of wealth. And cops in retirement get jobs because they're armed and they have the experience of situational awareness to drive people around, just to drive them, just to make sure that they're safe. And here's someone, a CEO, going to an important conference, and yet he doesn't have any security. So there may be some aspect that the company did not want employees to speak to the media because maybe there's information why he doesn't have a security company from the company's failure itself.
I personally think he didn't have a security company because of him. I don't see any company that's denying a CEO security. He's had private security in the past. I don't think he wanted private security. One, he makes $10 million a year, so he could easily fund the private security himself. Like that's not it's a drop in the hat for him. It's not a big deal. Especially like if you're just traveling for the day. You could get a security detail. What's it going to cost you? $2,500 for the day. You get an armed guard, drive you to and from places. It's not going to crush you, It's not a big deal for him to have private security. But I also don't think he would ever have to come out of his pocket for private security either. I think the company would have paid for it easily, and I think they do pay for it. So why he didn't have it's a question, and again, how people knew he didn't have it's another question. And how they knew he was entering at that exact time is another question. Because, we know the flow in New York City, right? 7 o'clock in the morning, the city's busy. 6:50, the city's busy. It's not flowing with people, but it's busier than Jacksonville is at midday. It's busier than Austin is in midday, right? And then as the hours increase, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. I mean, the amount of people that flood into New York City, you just can't even, it's unbelievable. And the amount of people that would have been on that street at that time by 9 o'clock in the morning would have been tremendous, right? So there was that small window there. I don't even know that this would have been possible an hour later, never mind 2 hours later. He would have had to do that in a flurry of hundreds of people. And then I think it would, as much as it's easy to blend in, it's also hard to get away also because now you get all those eyeballs on you as well. So, I mean, the whole private security thing to me is, I don't know what to make of it. I personally think that he didn't have private security because he didn't want private security. And I don't know why that is. If someone that was getting threats, maybe he was used to getting threats. I'm used to getting threats. You're used to getting threats. I don't want to say I become complacent with it, but it's a part of my daily life. My daily life is that it is what it is. Like, there are people that just really don't like me for whatever reason and would prefer to see me in the ground sooner than later. It just is what it is.
Shout out to a friend over here on the podcast, new listener. I never heard your name before. Thank you so much for being in this chat with us, Kelly Barnett. I think she brings up a great point. Maybe that's why he was the one chosen. He didn't want security. I mean, that's a great point, because I've been asking myself if this has something to do with insurance itself, which we don't know, just speculation at this time. That would be a great point. I've been saying that he doesn't have security. Why was he chosen? There are other CEOs. So I think that's a great point. It could be because he doesn't have security. I don't know. Do other CEOs in UnitedHealtcare have security? We don't have knowledge of that yet. I don't know. John, unless you have any knowledge. Me personally, I don't have any knowledge of that. If other CEOs have private security themselves, that's why I'm saying, is this something by the company? Is this something by himself? I do suspect, a company of this nature, would absolutely flip the bill for security, especially one of their CEOs who they want to protect. That's a high value person who has a lot of information about the company and is an important key factor in the significance for UnitedHealthcare. So Kelly Barnett, shout out to you. I think that's a great point. Absolutely.
Yeah. So the other thing, a lot of people are saying he was sloppy. The shooter is sloppy. He left a lot of evidence behind. In your opinion, and I mean, we're just speculating here, but in your opinion, do you believe that the evidence was left behind on purpose? He was sloppy on purpose. This is a game for the shooter and for those who conspire with the shooter. Like, what do you believe about how the evidence is laid out? The fact that they find the bag and it has Monopoly money in it. The fact that they find the shell, well, obviously the shells were left there, right? And a lot of people were saying, oh, well, if he's a professional, he would have caught the shell. It would have took one shot. He would have took the shell case and wouldn't have been left. But the shells were left at the scene and they had the words on there, right? The words that were written on the shell casings. Do you believe all of this is intentional or is it sloppy?
No, I think it's intentional. I think it's absolutely done on purpose. I think that this is arrogance, cockiness, and I think it's also a game. I think it's a game to scheme the NYPD and along with the FBI and ATF. Absolutely, because the evidence is so significant and so obvious. It's almost too obvious. I mean, listen. Some people say it's sloppy. Even if you were the dumbest person on earth, and you never committed a new crime in your life, you watch movies, and we all know how to lie. We were all children once in school, and we all made mistakes. Some of us were more mischievous than others, and we knew how to get out of trouble, right? At least you try to get out of trouble, right? I used to cut school all the time when I was young. That was my thing, right? And if I get caught, I would try to figure out how to get out of it, right? So it doesn't matter how brilliant you are, but some of this evidence is just so obvious. It's too obvious. The backpack, the ammunition, and I think this whole thing is telling a story. I think this person's playing a game, and they're telling a story to deflect the investigation. The ammunition is absolutely left there on purpose. There was 3 live rounds left at the scene, in addition to 3 shell casings. So if anybody understands the difference, 3 shell casings, right? If you're not active retired or if you're not familiar with firearms, these are actually spent shells. Those rounds were actually fired and left at the scene. But there was 3 live rounds. That's 3 rounds that were never fired. They were left at the scene. I think that was done on purpose, right? Because of what's written on the ammunition. So this is telling a story. I think it's complete deflection, complete distraction done on purpose. It could be the actual perpetrator doing it on purpose, but I think Scooch is onto something here. Dave Savella, shout out to you, saying it could be another person involved who's an accomplice to distract and deflect the entire investigation.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with him at all. It's listen, the possibilities are endless. The possibilities right now are completely endless. And for those of you that are on the chat, there's 1,257 people on here currently on the chat. People are jumping in and out. I'm trying to get through the comments. There's a lot. I'm only at Janine Feldman comments from 9:05. It's 9:50 right now. So I'm back a lot, so I'm going to try to get to the ones I can. I literally am skimming through them. If you'd like your comment to be seen, obviously you could star it and then it'll pop in my queue so that I'll see it quicker. I'm trying to get through them. There's a lot here. I don't know that we'll be able to get to all your comments and questions. But Janine says, how would he be able to board a plane without being recognized? I'm going to say the exact opposite. I'm going to say, how is he going to be recognized boarding the plane? All I have to do is change my clothes. I could change my appearance right now. I could put a hat on. You're not going to recognize me. I could shave my face, put a hat on. You're not going to recognize me. He was clean shaven. He had a hat on. He could take his hat off, shave his head, jump on a plane. No one's going to recognize him. He could just take his hat off. He's a completely different individual. Change his clothes, change his wear, put glasses on, put sunglasses on. I think it's easy to blend in, man. I don't, I could walk around New York City completely unnoticed if I want to. I think it's very easy to change your appearance. We all have a common tone, a common appearance of how we present, the type of clothes we traditionally wear. If we change that appearance, this guy goes from not looking like the Unabomber to looking like he's an executive, or he's got a pair of slacks on with a sport jacket and a tie or an open shirt, and he just looks like an insurance agent traveling. He's traveling overseas for business. I don't see how he gets recognized. I don't. I mean, based on his demeanor, I don't think it would be an easy thing to actually identify him.
Well, listen, I have to agree with you, John. And I'll tell you why. The reason why is I've traveled a lot. Traveled a lot in retirement. I've traveled to Brazil and Thailand, Malaysia, Bali, a lot of other places. I can tell you it's not difficult. It's not difficult to leave this country, and it's not difficult to enter this country. It's not difficult to get visas in other countries. It's very simple. Some countries, they give you as much as 90 days on the spot. You arrive at the country, and they'll give you the visa right there. And what it comes down to, as long as you're willing to pay. But again, to leave the country, you do need an itinerary. So this had to be well planned out, and there would have to be people to help. Because one thing is certain, when you do get a visa going into other countries, you need to provide a destination. You usually need to provide where you're going and the location of a hotel. So that would be very significant to leave with customs on the American side, and also customs in some of these other countries. You would have to leave a destination. Do they actually check out that destination? No, but it would be a clue. No one's going there to make sure you went there, but you do have to provide that information. So, but again, to leave this country and to enter the country is not difficult at all. So there, I will agree with you. Here we go. John just put this up. Seeking information, unknown suspect, murder investigation. Here's the pictures of the potential perpetrator, the person of interest, and some of them look quite different from each other. Could you make an assessment just on this? So I think John makes a great point, and some of our friends and listeners, as John said earlier, we're trying to keep up with your comments. They're great comments. They're flying through. We have a lot. If you donate coffee and donuts to the podcast, right, it will pop up in a color, and we'll be able to identify it. And of course, obviously, we'll read it right away because it pops up in a color we're able to see it. Absolutely that, John. I think you made a great point, because look at the description here. If someone changed their clothes into a suit, would you make that identification right away? No, and let's be honest, it's kind of tough to make an identification because we're giving subliminal messages to the public also that it's not a white male, because they keep saying light-skinned. And I think that does play on the psyche of people. I really think it does distort the investigation.
Yeah, Mikey G, metal detector in Long Island. Like I said, Mike has handled some high-profile murders across New York City that got a lot of media coverage, and he's saying, I'm taking bets that this guy will be in cuffs by the end of the week. How many? Anybody? I'm not so quick. Like I said, I think they have him identified. I would bet you right now that the shooter's identified. But I'm not gonna bet that they capture him, because they, I don't know what that looks like. I wouldn't take a bet. I would roll 50-50. If you gave me good odds, I bet you. Because I like playing the underdog, so I'll bet against you if you give me good odds. Tom Verney, good morning. Another former NYPD detective on here. We got a lot of detectives. We got some murder police on here. So this is what the FBI is putting out. Like I said, I think it's a $50,000 reward from the FBI. The question I think that everyone asks, is this the same person? Is it the same person? How did they determine that this is the person that was on the street that day with a different backpack? I don't know. There's details that we don't have. But like I said, anything's possible. Scooch brings up a good point. It could be meant to distract. It appears to me that some of the evidence was left to distract. I believe that those words on the casing were a distraction, as well as I believe the Monopoly money is a distraction. It wouldn't shock me at all if those things were all done, and then we come to find out later that this was a hit because of a lover's quarrel or something that has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that he was a UnitedHealtcare CEO. It wouldn't shock me at all. I would be like, okay, yeah, it makes sense to me.
We the captain now. Again, new friend to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here. $1.99 to the podcast, coffee and donuts. He makes a great point. Arguably sloppy and also professional. Fascinating. Again, it goes back to what I said, the Karate Kid effect. The lens that you look at this actual heinous crime, you can look at it, you can watch that video where the person of interest fires the shot, and you can say, wow, it looks professional. The stance, the proficiency in the firearm. Or you can look at it and say, hey, he doesn't look like he's clearing the jam. He looks like he's just fumbling, and it appears to be sloppy. I think this is fascinating, absolutely, when it comes to that. I got to point out what Adam says here. Adam, shout out to you. I think this is another new friend to the podcast. He says, hate the fact that people are laughing at his death. Right. I mean, you got people out here having a look-alike contest. No one is perfect in life, and we all make mistakes. It's a human life, and it shows how disgusting others can be. Absolutely, I agree with you. John and I talked about it earlier in the podcast. Not sure if you were here for that, Adam. We've been here almost 2 hours. But we were talking about how people are dressed up as lookalikes, and it's their right to do that, right? It's the First Amendment right, freedom of speech, freedom of expression. But should you do it? It's morally wrong. It's just completely disgusting. No matter what. We don't know Brian Thompson. We don't know if he's a good guy, bad guy. I didn't see much dirt on him, so it seems like he was a good guy maybe. Some people like insurances. They don't. I mean, I don't. But am I going to take it on Brian Thompson? It's the same thing where a lot of people hate cops. Should they take it out on every cop if they don't like cops? Absolutely not. And the same thing goes for Brian Thompson. So shout out to you for Adam for that comment. This is a life. The bottom line is someone's life was taken. There are family members out there hurting. There are loved ones. There are coworkers hurting. There's a lot of people affected by this.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and then, his kids, right? They got to see this forever. Like his children, they're witnessing their father's murder on national TV every day, right? We're all sitting here discussing their father's murder. I mean, traumatizing, So, our sympathy 100% goes out to the family. Our thoughts, prayers, to the children. I mean, it's absolutely horrible. But it's just the nature of what it is. Social media today, information age. This is how the world is today. And I don't think, I don't think there's any really going backwards. There's no going backwards. We're not going back to 1980 where there are no cell phones. It's just not happening. This is how the world is. We got to adapt and we got to be better and do better. I agree. I just want to give a shout out to Dewey Do, consistent listener to the podcast, consistently donates to the podcast. Doesn't usually join the lives though. So I think we've done you a disservice by never acknowledging you on the actual lives. But Dewey Do, shout out to you. But Eric, seriously, are you confident that those two photos are the same people? And are you confident that those two photos relate to the person that was on the street that day?
No. So I remember I took a course with the NYPD. It was one day, and it was how to identify faces, right? And what they taught you is to pretty much break it up into sections and kind of divide it in half. Not necessarily in four, but divide from the head to the nose and then for the nose down, right? So the nose down to the chin, the lips area, the nose really provides a lot of information on a person's face. And to me, if you look at the structure of the chin along with the lips, it looks different on both of these photos. And the nose looks kind of similar, but on one here on the right, there's kind of more of a hook on the nose. I see some differences. I'm not confident. Again, this is kind of grainy, and I haven't really got a chance to really look at it and split it up and start really looking at it. But just at this glance, it doesn't look the same to me. What are your thoughts? I don't think this is the same person.
I can't say yes or no. Like I said, I really can't rule out anything at this point. I can't say that that's the same person for certainty, and I sure as hell can't say that that's the same person that we saw on the video. Again, NYPD, FBI, they have a lot more information that they haven't put out. It's why they're connecting the dots with these two things. But I wouldn't rule out that there were multiple players involved in this. I wouldn't rule that out either. So there is definitely some misdirection being thrown in the media. There's a lot of media spin on this event. I don't know. I mean, again, I really don't believe anything at this point. I think the one thing it does highlight for me, though, is the failure in the drones, where they were the drone as a first responder. Do you remember they were going to fly directly to the location upon that scene? Where were they? Like, how come they didn't properly identify the individual right away? How come they weren't on the scene almost momentarily within a minute? So I think, again, we're seeing the failure in the public safety plan by the NYPD, which is to lord over inexperienced rookie cops and technology that really does not do what seasoned, trained NYPD professionals could do. So I think again, I see a clear failure immediately. As much as we know that it's hard to apprehend somebody on a New York City street immediately, in a time when we're really not expecting anything to happen in a place that's traditionally not flooded with crime around that time, I think it would be very hard to prevent this shooting. But again, we did see a huge failure prior to this, a week prior to this, where an individual was walking up and down New York City streets, murdering people with 2 knives in his hand, covered in blood, and basically walked from one side of the city to the other and killed and murdered 3 people in broad daylight. So anything's possible. I think the NYPD and New York City mayor really have to go back to the drawing board on this one and see, are they properly patrolling the streets of New York City, and have they inflated this drone program as a first responder? I'm going to say they absolutely did, and they will never replace an experienced police officer.
Well, there's no doubt about it. You can't replace those hungry, burly, enthusiastic anti-crime guys. If we had anti-crime guys out there, or conditions guys in plain clothes that are hungry, they would be out there. They would be sniffing out Central Park way more in depth than a drone or any of these dogs. You and I both know we did anti-crime, and the guys out there, how hungry they are, and they go out there seeking that perpetrator. John, you spoke about this earlier, and I'll say, I worked in the Lower East Side. I did anti-crime as a sergeant in the Lower East Side, and he talked about the complexities and actually finding a perpetrator in comparison to 123 in Staten Island. And I will say, yeah, of course, you're working in Metropolis, and it's difficult, but we had some great success in finding the perpetrators because, again, you look at the baseline and you look at what appears to be normal in that specific area at a time, and we would seek out the perpetrators. They would be so obtuse. It was almost like when you look at those boards and you have to squint your eyes to actually get that clear vision of what the image is. The same thing is when you're seeking out a perpetrator in a metropolis, especially in the Lower East Side. It's so busy, and it would look like a conglomerate of things, but that person of interest or that subject in many cases would emerge because they would not fit the baseline. So we would find that perpetrator. The anti-crime guys were so hungry. It's such a huge asset we lost. If there's anything, any message I could give to MAGA Eric, the post-indictment Eric Adams, is reinstate anti-crime. Bring back those veterans that are hungry. They're dogs out there. These guys are out there. They're going to get that perpetrator, that person of interest immediately. They are far ahead of these drones and far ahead of any technology. A hungry police officer with a keen eye is not replaceable. Again, these drones, they want to make them to be sexy. This whole thing with technology, it's great, supplemental. Nothing replaces an anti-crime cop with his boots on the ground, hungry, wanting to get that person of interest. If anybody does community policing, it's anti-crime guys because they want to get that perpetrator. They want to stop that crime. They want to get that illegal firearm. They're hungry, and they do their job well when they were doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ron points out that Kaz, the NYPD's deputy commissioner of operations, he was notified of the backpack being found by members of service conducting the grid search while doing the news interview about how the drones were going to do the grid search. So again, who found the backpack? The individual, the person, right? The human element of policing. It wasn't the drones that found them. Again, we saw even when it came to Central Park, we spoke on the failure of the drone program in Central Park. If you're in the Great Lawn, the drones, I guess, would be a good thing, right? Because you have sky distance, you could see everything. But when you get to Central Park, most of Central Park is covered in trees. How are the drones maneuvering through and around trees? They're not. So that's why that's why actual cops found the backpack and not drones. This article just came out from the New York Post. UnitedHealtcare CEO assassination. Retired NYPD lieutenant says person of interest is fascinated by attention. So a retired New York City Police Department lieutenant and former NYPD commander are shedding light on the manhunt for the suspect who gunned down UnitedHealtcare CEO Brian Thompson and what investigators are doing to track him down. He's not a professional, but he's calculated. He's obviously planned this out, but to a very good degree as well. He planned his escape route. He planned everything prior to it, Joe Cardinelli told Fox News. Cardinelli added the fact that the killer left behind the bullets and left message on them, like the pose, make him think it could be someone involved in a civil suit with UnitedHealthcare or at least connected, making this not a coincidence or wrong place, wrong time situation. The words deny, depose, and defend were written on live rounds and casings left behind the scene by the assassin after the shooting. The words could be derived from delay, deny, defend. Why insurance companies don't pay claims and what you can do about it. A book published by Jane Feynman in 2010. Fox News Digitals could not reach Feynman or the book's publisher. Devlin pressed for comment. I'm still not convinced that this is somebody who just happened to be, upon him on that morning. I think he had intimate knowledge of where Thompson would be at that hour. Now, how did he get that knowledge? That's the $1 million question right now, Cardinelli said. He's leaving these clues. He's discarding it. He planned it from the beginning. Cardinelli said he has seen actions like this in the past, criminals who he says get arrogant and feel like they are smarter than the police. They want to commit the perfect crime, but they're doing things to let them know that it is me. I mean, him showing his face, he had to know that there was a camera there and he showed his face. Maybe it was just for a flirtatious moment that they discussed. But I even said that somebody I would like to speak to, she's actually had a conversation with him, the clerk at the hostel. Cardinelli said when asked about the person of interest showing his face in the lobby at the Manhattan hostel. Thompson's wife, Paulette, also said her husband had been receiving death threats. There had been some threats, Thompson's wife told NBC News. Basically, I don't know a lack of healthcare coverage. I don't know the details. I just know he said there were some people that had been threatening him. When asked why the NYPD is not releasing the name of the person of interest, Cardinale said the public is on a need-to-know basis, and that right now there are certain elements of the case they do not need to know. They're giving as much as they can without compromising the case. Once he is caught, needs to move forward and get a conviction, so they cannot, just for the sake of putting it out there to the public, blow their case before it's even formed, Cardinale said. Before we go further, what do you think about Joe Cardinale?
I think he provides a great synopsis of speculation just in the manner that we provided. It's all speculation at this point, right? It's speculation that this was done intentional because of arrogance, that this person actually wants to have some sort of fame and fortune in this actual crime, right? Leaving their fingerprints and their footprint and leaving the information on that ammunition. It could be. And the other speculation is what we're saying, right? So who's right and who's wrong? We don't know yet. The other speculation that we're saying is that's complete deflection and distraction. So I think we're at the point where we're all giving our observation based on our own anecdotal experience, based on what we see at this point. I think it's great angles, but these are all angles the NYPD and the FBI, along with the ATF, actually have to investigate to determine if it's actual a potential angle for this case, or if it's actually just that and cancel it out as potential part of this case. So it's a lot of work. I think it's a great article, but it's just speculation. He doesn't have any proof either.
Yeah, and I also think, listen, I think he did provide a good analysis of why they're not releasing it, what they're looking at right now. But again, like the whole professional thing bothers. He's not a professional. He was sloppy. That whole thing bothers me. I'm like, I don't understand like how you could say someone's not a professional. It's like, and I gave the example on a prior podcast we did about this. You get two cops. They both have 20 years of experience. One guy basically wasted gas and put a uniform on for 20 years. And the other guy was a seasoned, trained investigator solving murders. And then they turn bad and they do a hit, right? They do a hit for somebody. They're both, in my eyes, a professional, right? First of all, just the fact that you were hired to do something makes you a professional. Now, let's say you weren't hired and this was an act that you did of vengeance. The planning that went into this, I'm also going to say, kind of makes you a professional. In my opinion, it's a professional hit. The question is, it was sloppy. There are things that were sloppy, but is the sloppiness intentional? And I think that's a big thing that we can't rule out either, is that there were things done here either because the person wasn't well versed in a lot of the actions he took and how criminal investigations play out, or they were done intentionally to mislead. And I wouldn't rule out either of those things at this point. So yeah, I think everything again at this point is conjecture, national attention. I agree with the Lieutenant Cardinale, though. I believe that this person is identified and they're not putting that name out. And I 100% support. There's no reason for the public to know the name at this point. When he's apprehended, put the name out. It's not going to help me find out who it is by giving me his name. You know what I mean? Or you.
Well, I agree. I mean, we said earlier in the episode, and if anybody missed that, our position, at least, I believe that the NYPD, along with the FBI and ATF, had the information, the pedigree to this person of interest pretty shortly after the actual homicide took place. But I think what they're doing, the reason why I think they're holding it close to their chest, is because at this point they have to find out and determine if he acted alone or if he acted with accomplices. So try to narrow in on this investigation to find potential other persons of interest that may have helped this perpetrator carry this heinous crime out. Also, I believe that they want to zero in and make sure that this is a tight case and they have all the evidence possible that could be apprehended so that this case is presented well, so that when this goes to trial, that this person is actually convicted and prosecuted, actually goes to jail for this crime. So I believe that the NYPD, FBI, and ATF is wrapping that up. I don't think they have to release this information at this time. I don't believe it's a serial killer. Someone had mentioned that earlier. I don't believe it's someone that's out there killing multiple people and is a potential threat in society. I think this was isolated, completely targeted. So I believe time is on their side. We are on day 6. It's a long time for the NYPD and FBI to not make this apprehension yet. But again, we go back, and I think that's important. We reflect, we talk on professionalism. Let's think about the assassination attempt on Donald Trump's life in Pennsylvania, when we had professional agents attempting to put their firearms back in their holster while trying to protect Donald Trump. And they were extremely sloppy. Were they not? Extremely sloppy. They couldn't even get their firearms. They couldn't even coordinate with one another. Are they professionals? Are they not? They're professionals in their job, right? They're professionals in providing security for Donald Trump. John, don't you agree? They're supposed to be professionals, and they were completely sloppy.
Oh, that was horrific. That was we got beat up about that one too when on the assassination attempt when Trump got shot. We got beat up, and you know what's funny about that to me is like we talked about like how they had women who were small stature, and Donald Trump's a good guy, a big guy, so they weren't able to provide the proper coverage, and we got absolutely assaulted. And since that day, they were great. And there was a lot of cops on there, too. A lot of cops, a lot of feds, all jumping down our throat. You guys never did executive protection. You were just cops, blah, 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 blah. You were just lieutenants in the NYPD, right? All this junk. And I'm like, okay. Next day, I'm like, where are all the small females that were just guarding President Trump? How come they're not with him today? How come they're not with him the next day? Where have they been since? So, we were spot on with that analysis of it, and they were completely sloppy, too. A lot of people are saying, if it was 2 people, does that mean that the NYPD's investigation is sloppy? No, it means that the NYPD more than likely had a lot of information that they didn't tell the public immediately, and they're putting out what they need to put out in a strategic manner. I believe in transparency. I believe in public transparency, but this is a murder investigation. I don't think we need to know all the details right at this moment. I think all the details will come out in time. Eric, what are you thinking about time frame on this? Do you think the shooter will be apprehended? Like, what do you think? Like, when do you? Well, not if. When do you think he'll be apprehended?
I mean, we got some experienced guys on here. We got Mikey G saying he'll be apprehended by the end of the week. That's very possible, but I do think the more time goes on, it's less likely he'll be apprehended by the end of the week. I mean, day 6, that's a long time in investigation, so highly prolific as this one. Someone had made a comment, I think it was Dudley Brother, I'm not sure, that if this person was poor, the case would have been done within 15 minutes, and pretty much nobody would have really done a proper investigation. I think that's what they were alluding to. I don't think that's the case at all. I know the NYPD detectives, it doesn't matter your economic status. They go out there, they do an awesome job of doing investigations. Obviously, the FBI got involved. This is a media frenzy. It's got a lot of attention, a lot of eyes to it. This investigation is not treated any different than someone that doesn't have the same economic status. The NYPD puts all their resources into every investigation. I will say that. I will say the rank and file does their job. But this is a media frenzy. I mean, this is someone that's high profile. And we have to have a media frenzy on this because if a perpetrator can get to Brian Thompson, the CEO, well, they can get to anybody. And that's why I say to the NYPD Internal Affairs Bureau, shame on you for not releasing the information of who the cop is behind the fake moniker known as All Cops Are Woke that threatened John, myself, and our kids. Disgusting that you never released that. We're not scared, but we're aware. We're aware. We have situational awareness because there are people out there that are willing to take the life of someone else in broad daylight. So shame on the NYPD for not releasing that information when people made significant death threats to myself, John, and our kids. But again, you know what, John? This is a highly prolific case. Will this be done by the end of the week? I will say no. I will say no because this is day 6. That's a long time. If this was day 2, I would have said okay by the end of the week. But day 6, there's something wrong going here. There's something wrong with this case right now. Something's missing that they have not made yet. They do know who the shooter is. There's no doubt about it. But they're missing some link. There's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah, Tom Joyce, former murder police on here, longtime investigator, homicide investigator, says the only sure thing that is the squad is watching, reading what is on the news and chuckling. Where do they get some of this stuff? Question mark. I agree, and that's why I'm not solid on anything that I say. I've been on the news a few times about this, and I haven't said anything other than I think that he will be apprehended. And I think, we have to let everything play out because that's the only thing I know for sure. The only thing I know for sure is that I don't believe anything and I don't know anything. I know that there's a lot more information that's out there not that's out there in the public, but is that the NYPD has, right? They didn't just come upon that hostel. They didn't just come to the fact that he was at that bus terminal. They have a lot of intricate details. But I will agree with the person that said that if he was poor, it would have moved on. I 100% agree with him. Brian Thompson, there is no amount of media frenzy would have happened. You wouldn't even hear about this. You might not even read about it in the paper. You might not even see it. If there was a broad daylight shooting, 6:40 in the morning, and it just happened to be some poor guy walking down the block, it's over. Yeah, is there going to be a detective assigned to that case, and are they going to try to solve that homicide? Absolutely. Are they going to be given the resources to solve that homicide? No. Is it going to be up there, and they're going to be questioned about what's going on with this? No. So I 100% agree with that person that, would the mayor be commenting on it? No. He would just be saying crime is down. That's it. Would the police commissioner be commenting on it? No. That she'd be telling you crime's down. Would the chief of detectives be commenting on it? No. He would just be telling you crime is down. So I 100% agree with that fact. That is 100% true. If this was, and we see it every day in New York City. I mean, how many murders have happened since that we don't even know about? We don't even know their names. You don't know any steps in the case, and nobody's even talking about it. So it just is. It's the nature of media at this moment. I don't just blame the NYPD for that fact, though. I blame the mainstream media, the corporate media. Not the mainstream media. I blame the corporate media for that. Right? That's their fault. Why aren't they honing in on those murders on the street? Why isn't every life important? And with the media attention comes the pressure on the NYPD and elected officials to do their job. When they don't get the media attention, when they don't get the lawsuits, we see what they do. They sit on their hands and they do nothing. Everything's fine. Safest big city in the world. Crime's just up 35% since I took office. No big deal. It's doing great. Look, it's down over 2%. It's down 0.32% for the last 6 days. Look how great we're doing. And then just minus, 2019, 2020, 2021, and about a 10-year period. And then look, we're at like historic lows, at or near. So I agree with that statement. It's and it's horrific and it's horrible, and that's just where we are as a society.
Well, let me go back on that. I think that's a great point you brought up. Very valid points. And I want to go back on that, what I meant by that. Because when I said the NYPD puts their effort into it, I'm talking about the actual detectives themselves. Because I watch detectives. I responded to numerous homicides throughout my career. And I watched the detectives. I watched them investigate homicides for actual perpetrators who were maniacs themselves, who were cretins, who were savage thugs. But they got killed themselves from a rival gang member or something like that. And I watched the detectives. I watched them work tirelessly. They didn't care who the person was, how they lived their life. They did their job. So when I say the NYPD will go out there and do what they have to do, I meant the actual detectives. But you're right. You're right that because it's a media frenzy, this is a media frenzy because he's high profile. He's a CEO. His net worth is extreme. Adams is actually talking about it. And with that, the byproduct is more resources. I think you brought up a great valid point, and I agree with that. But when I say the NYPD will go out there and do their job exemplary, put all resources, I mean the actual detectives themselves, because I watched them. They didn't care who the person was, and they did their job. But you're right, the byproduct of the leadership of the media frenzy does bring the extra eyes on it, which brought the FBI, of course, right? This person crossed states. They have extreme net worth. So, yes, it's definitely a byproduct. I agree. So, in some ways, the socioeconomic status does affect it. It's sad. It's sad because as we speak about this, we talk about this, you know what? You're right, because it's the leadership, it's the administration that puts the information out there. Because if it was some gang member or just some innocent person walking around, we probably wouldn't know that person's name. So, that's absolutely right. So, listen, I appreciate everyone that's on here. Continue, like, share, subscribe to this podcast. That's what this is about, having real conversations, real experience. And we take pride on the murder detectives, the squad guys that have the experience. Your input is so important, and we value your input. And it's important, even those that don't have any experience with policing, that you give your opinion. It's important to have your opinion because your opinion is important out there. You need to have situational awareness yourself, right? It's important to watch this stuff. What are the clues? What are things to look for? If you're just the average day, everyday person walking around in a city where someone could go west to east throughout the entire Manhattan and kill 3 innocent people, and then the police are in a gun battle, and it's a CEO of a company with an extreme amount of net worth can actually meet their demise. You know what? Some just random person, you know what? You have to ask yourself, how do you keep yourself safe? So it's important that you weigh in also.
Yeah, so Michelle Mills says, why are the police spending so much money and time on this one murder? Please don't tell me it's because he's rich. I'm not going to tell you it's that. I'm going to tell you because it's the media attention that's on them, and it's the pressure and the public attention that's on them. This is how you get elected officials and their appointed managers to move. The public comes out and says, we do not want this. Where's this going on? And they're assisted by the media in that fact. So it's because of the media attention. It has nothing to do with the economic status of them. It has everything to do with the media attention and the public pushing back on them. And the fact of the matter is, if it was just someone on the street, I've seen crime scenes wrapped up in 10 minutes, 10, 20 minutes. I West Indian Day Parade, I saw a young man stabbed to death. I responded to the scene. People were walking over him. We established a crime scene. Crime scene was taken apart in 10 minutes. The guy was removed to the hospital. Was removed to on the EMS, and that was it. The crime scene was done. It was disgraceful. I was like, wow, I can't believe a young man just lost his life, and this is like what we're doing. So the things, it depends. It depends the scenario. It depends what's happening at the time, and it depends who cares. And I didn't read anything about that. I didn't even read one thing in the article in the news about that. I don't even remember the person's name that it was. Terrible, absolutely terrible.
Well, again, I mean, I think it's good that this case is actually in the media causing a frenzy right now because, as I said earlier, if anybody if been on the beginning here with the podcast with us, our friends and listeners, what I said at the beginning of the episode, and I still believe that, is this is the pinnacle case at this point right now in this administration with Eric Adams and this failed leadership of the NYPD. This is a pinnacle case where they no longer could hide perception versus reality and actually control the narrative and change your truth. The reality is that, I say it all the time, Central Park and Times Square, these are the benchmark indicators for crime in New York City. And this savage crime was carried out during the day in broad daylight. And I think it was at 6:44 a.m. 6:44 a.m. in New York City is a different animal than anywhere else in the entire country. 6:44 a.m. in New York City is hopping. There's a lot of things going on. It's a metropolis. It's moving. There's eyes everywhere. There's cameras everywhere. There's cars everywhere. Someone saw something, and many people saw something, and he was still able to carry out this heinous crime in broad daylight and get to the CEO, who was a high-value, high-powered man of a company in New York City. So it shows the reality, and the perception is the reality. And right now, New York City is in deep, deep waters. It's tanking, and the crime numbers that Eric Adams is trying to give out to the public is a complete lie. So shout out to Sam Antar. Check him out on X. Razor Chattery. Check them out on X, who provide the real information and the real numbers of crime in New York City based on NYPD's actual numbers. Ron Layson, shout out to you, by the way. Good morning. Giving a timestamp for 10:29 and no hashtag EDM. It's still early. 2.5 hours into it. I don't think we're going anywhere yet. So good morning to you.
Yeah, Tom Joy says, you want to get the NYPD's attention, give them a sexy victim with a sexy address. And unfortunately, that's America, right? That's where we are in America. So this article from New York Post comes out from Joe Marino, Kevin Sheehan, and Jorge Fitzgibbon. NYPD search for UnitedHealtcare CEO Brian Thompson shooter leads divers to Central Park Pond for possible clues, including the gun. So here you could see them. NYPD divers continued to search the Central Park Boathouse Pond for potential clues, including the gun used in the slaying of UnitedHealtcare CEO Brian Thompson, as the cops were still hunting the killer. I don't know why they don't have underwater drones, Kaz, so that we don't have to send the divers down, Kaz, but whatever. Investigators believe that on-the-lam suspect may have tossed evidence into the lake in the middle of the sprawling park, sources said. The murder weapon has yet to be recovered, sources noted. Video footage showed the two divers prepping to hit the water Sunday, the second straight day at the popular landmark, 5 days after Thompson's shockingly caught on video death outside a high-end hotel. The dive team apparently turned up empty-handed and is expected to pick up its search in the pond again on Monday. So today they're back, right? The NYPD deployed gun-sniffing dogs to Fort Tryon Park on Sunday, but the search turned up empty for any firearms, police sources said. Here's a photo of the divers about to go down, getting down and anchoring. Shout out to the NYPD dive team. Cops have released photos of the alleged killer in a Big Apple taxi cab and recovered what investigators believe to be his backpack, which contained a jacket from the popular American brand Tommy Hilfiger and fake Monopoly money. New surveillance images reviewed the post Sunday suggest the gunman got out of the cab in front of 2372 Amsterdam Avenue between West 177th Street and West 178th Street, next to an MTA bus stop known as the East Village M101 bus line, before disappearing again. The location is near the George Washington Bridge bus terminal. The detectives searched through all of the video on Friday. The manager of an apartment building at the Amsterdam Avenue site said Sunday they didn't have any luck. They never saw him. The footage does not show the suspect leaving the area on foot, she added. So what do you think about that, Eric? Do you think that he dumped the gun, or do you think he kept the gun?
I don't think he dumped the gun in that area. I don't. I mean, the fact that he left the ammunition on purpose, I believe it was on purpose. 3 live rounds and 3 spent shell casings. I don't think that he dumped the firearm there. I mean, listen, again, I want to say, you said it before, I want to say it again. Shout out to NYPD Scuba, the dive team. I think they're overlooked sometimes. We forget about them in policing. Those guys do an amazing job. They go in dark, disgusting New York waters and navigate to find evidence and to find potential bodies in certain cases. Those guys are phenomenal. That is, I will say this, that is the only unit in the NYPD that no matter what nepotism you may have or what ties you have to the Kings, you're not getting that unit unless you could pass that physical fitness test. So shout out to the NYPD Scuba unit. A lot of times overlooked. I think what they do is amazing. I don't think the firearm is there. I know they're going to do a second look, but I don't think the firearm is there. I think he held on to the firearm, which would, if you got onto a bus, nobody's going to check him. If you got into a plane, yes, it's something different. But if he navigated by bus, that firearm was probably discarded somewhere else.
Yeah. I mean, but what I'm saying is, do you think that it was discarded? That's what I'm saying. Do you think he dumped the gun, or do you think he kept the gun? I'm not saying where. We don't know where.
Just period, right? You just say,
I'm just saying, right? Period. Did he dump that gun at some point?
You gotta love it, right? I mean, like, is there right and wrong? Whatever I say, some people that agree with me, some people aren't. But I'm just gonna say, based on what I believe, what makes sense, I think the gun was dumped. I would say the gun was dumped, but not at that location. If I had to put my money on it, if you want to carry this out, I think the gun was dumped. Now, I also want to say this. I know some people talk about economic status. We talked about that in solving homicides. But the reality is, in poor economic areas, a lot of these homicide cases, they're closed out pretty quickly. And the reason for that is because a lot of times people in poor areas, they don't navigate too much, right? They stay kind of isolated to a specific area. So it's much easier also based on their lifestyle to actually find the perpetrators. Yes, we don't find the names, but someone like this who's the CEO, a high-value, high-powered man who travels a lot, he travels from Minnesota, travels to New York, has a lot of exposure. It is different. It is different. So I will say that. And it does require media frenzy, especially in the case. I mean, look, it's day 6, and we still don't have the information on the perpetrator. We believe we know the NYPD knows who the perpetrator is, but I think we could all agree that they don't have it wrapped up yet, that they can actually make a significant arrest.
Yeah, well, I think that's everything is speculation at this point. In my opinion, we've looked for a lot of people from video surveillance or from still photos. A lot of people saying, how do you know he's white? I mean, I think light-skinned is the proper term for this. He's light-skinned. We don't know what this person is. And even the fact that I keep saying he is another thing. This person right here appears to have feminine features to me. Could this be a trans person? Possibly. Could this be a female? I wouldn't rule it out. I wouldn't rule it out. I keep saying he. I've said he this entire show. I've been saying he for a while. But I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not even positive that this person is a female. I mean, you know what I mean? Like the person that's specifically in this still right here. So again, like I said, everything's speculation. I hope they find him sooner than later. I would assume he dumped the gun. Again, I'm doing that. I would assume that the shooter dumped the gun, just based upon traditionally what happens and what we've seen in the past, right? In our experience, that's the only thing I would say. Where he dumped the gun, I have no idea. So I think everything's speculation at this point. I really don't think we could go much further on this. I think, we've done 2 hours and 30 minutes. It's been real, there's a lot that needs to come out. There's a lot that's known to the NYPD and to the FBI that they're not putting out there. And I think we're going to know about it sooner than later. But I would push back on anyone at this point that tells me that this was not a professional murder. Because I'm going to say he evaded apprehension for 6 days. So regardless of his skill level, amateur or not, looks to be professional to me.
Where's Matt Walsh? Where's Matt Walsh when you need him, right? What is a woman? Because I tell you what, looking at this picture, to me, very distinct feminine features. Could it be a trans person? Of course. I mean, this day and age, you never know, right? But to me, it appears to be feminine bone structure, feminine features. Are there some feminine, thin bone structure men? Yes. But just with the hood on, to me, it has the appearance of a woman. I had said that earlier in the episode. I'm looking at the shoulders. You can't really tell with the jacket, but there are some feminine features there. Katie, shout out to you. Katie says, how many shots did he take? There were 6 rounds recovered. Does that mean 3 shots with 3 cleared rounds? So there were 3 shots fired. There were 3 spent shell casings, which means those rounds were found. They had already been fired. There were 3 live rounds, meaning 3 rounds at the scene that were not fired. They were never actually placed in the firearm and fired, which I believe that those were left intentional because of the scripture that is actually on that ammunition. Could this be carried out by a woman? Of course it could. Could it be a man? Yes. It just happens that this photo could be the angle, appears to have some feminine features, which is why I did see some differences in the other photo with the other person of interest with the hood. Let's just discuss one more thing before we get out of here. I know we're 2.5 hours into it. If you like what you see, please like, share, and subscribe. If you like John and myself in this podcast, thank you so much to our friends and listeners. If you're new to this podcast, we appreciate it. If you hate us, if you're trolls, you don't like us, hey, listen, we invite you to. We don't kick anybody out of here unless you're extremely disrespectful and disrupting the podcast. So we appreciate your opinion. We appreciate opposition. So just want to talk about the hostel. What do you think about the evidence that they have at the hostel? Do you think that is more deflection? Because apparently that's where the mask was removed and the potential person of interest was flirting with someone at the hostel. How significant do you think that is to this case?
Wait, say it again. What about the mask?
Supposedly the information that was provided by the media, and again, I think Tom Joyce is right. The media is throwing all this stuff out there. Supposedly the mask was removed at the hostel because there was someone working there flirting with this person of interest, or he was flirting with her or something like that. What do you think about that? You think that's significant? Or, I mean, did you hear anything about that?
I mean, the only thing that's significant to me is that we got a somewhat clear shot of the face. You know, I don't know that they were flirting or not flirting. We don't even know what the interaction was. What did the person sound like? What was his? I think there's a lot of evidence there that we don't know, that they haven't put out. There was a lot of questions that the public and the media have about what happened at that interaction, the interaction with the cabbie, right? Like, why did he do that with in the cab too as well? So I think we have a clear shot, and I think there's a lot more evidence and a lot more questions that were answered to investigators about those scenarios that have led them to be at the point where they're at now. And then, you know, a lot of people going crazy about this light skin thing. So let me explain to you right now. When we're saying that someone's white, what the world generally sees as a white person is like someone of European descent. That might not be the case. Light skin to me means anybody. It does not mean a light skinned black person. It means his tone of his skin color. The tone of his skin color is light skinned, is white skinned. That does not mean that he's traditionally Caucasian or white. Like people are saying on here, he could be Lebanese. He could be Turkish. He could be of any descent. He could be of Spanish descent. That does not mean that he's white. And I think the proper term is light skin. I think his skin tone is of light, is a light toned thing. I believe that this could be a male. When people are saying it looks like someone of Middle Eastern descent or Lebanese of descent, I would kind of agree, but I'm not sitting here and saying that that's what it is. Like I said, we really don't know. You really can't rule anything out based upon those two photos. You just can't rule it out. Anyone that's sitting here hard on any facts right now, I don't know where you're getting it from. I'm proud, I'm proud that you have a strong stance, but I've been fooled plenty of times. We've seen this plenty of times with still photos of people that look identical to the photo, to the still. I mean, we saw that in the case of James Blake with the tennis player. If you would have seen the wanted flyer that the detective that tackled the tennis player, James Blake, and he got in trouble for it, and they said it was racist. If you would have seen the wanted flyer, James Blake was an identical match. I said right there, I when I saw the flyer, I said, I'm putting James Blake in handcuffs too, until I'm proven otherwise. I believe I have probable cause at this point. I'm making the determination. And we've seen it time and time again, and it absolutely was not James Blake. It was somebody completely different, but the wanted flyer looked exactly like James Blake to a T. To a T.
Well, I would like to know, and this is information that has not been provided to the public, what name, obviously most likely not the real name, but what name was used at this hostel if in fact this is the potential perpetrator? What conversations did he have with, if any conversations were had, with whom? So what potential witnesses do we have? Was there an accent? What, any tattoos, any specific indicators? This information has not been received to the public. So there's definitely a lot of information on the chest. What potential evidence was retrieved from the hostel, right? Did this person of interest have anything at the hostel that belonged to him? Or anything else? What type of identification was presented at this house, if any? What form of payment? So there's a lot of information that the NYPD has at their chest, along with the FBI and the ATF, that has not been provided yet. So the question goes back to, is it because it's beneficial to this investigation, Or is it because this administration is not transparent? And unfortunately, we have to ask those questions because we've seen a reflection of how this administration has operated. It's been the least transparent, has not provided information. But the FBI is in charge right now, which we believe, and I think the FBI is in charge, and we can all agree on that. So that might be something directed by the FBI as well. So at this point, I mean, we're here 2 hours and 40 minutes. We provided speculation, different angles, different observations from ourselves, from our friends, listeners, some very experienced detectives that have done murder cases themselves. I think the only thing that we could say is factual in this case right now is that this was premeditated and targeted. Other than that, I think everything with this entire case is speculation and is open to interpretation.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Before we get out of here, let's just talk about Daniel Penny right now. Daniel Penny trial. Obviously, the jury was deadlocked. The judge removed the top charge in the case. However, Daniel Penny's case goes on. What do you think? Do you think we're going to get results as early as today, this week? Like, what do you think is the outcome of the Daniel Penny trial?
Yeah, I think we're going to get results this week. I think the fact that he removed the top charge is an indicator that we're headed for a hung jury at this point, and they don't want to have to try this case again because it will be another media frenzy. And I think the district attorneys at this point know that if this is affected so much by politics right now, and they actually have a chance of convicting him, I pray to God that he's found not guilty. But if this is a hung jury and this is a mistrial and this case gets tried again, I'm confident that Daniel Penny would definitely be found not guilty, and that case would be much better off. Now that we have different politics, we have Ritchie Torres, who's now he's all pro safety and against crime. He's pro law enforcement. We have a complete new Ritchie Torres. We have Eric Adams, who's now MAGA Eric. So we have a different politics right now in New York City. So I think Daniel Penny will get a different shake, a different fair assessment if there's a new trial. So the fact that they got rid of the top charge says to me it's almost like, well, here, convict him on something. So I'm praying that they don't, but I do think it's going to be solved. I'm sorry, that it's going to be determined and decided upon this week.
Yeah, so Daniel Penny jury returns after judge's dismissal deadlock top charge. This comes out 43 minutes ago from Fox News. So let's just read through this real quick. The Manhattan jurors weighing the fate of Marine veteran Daniel Penny returned to court on Monday, but only to consider the lesser charge against him after a judge controversially tossed a more serious charge and avoided a mistrial. So, I mean, that in itself is questionable because if they couldn't agree on the top charge, why do we believe that this jury will agree on any charge? Again, it's my opinion that Daniel Penny's actions were justified. They were justified under Article 35 of the New York State Penal Code. And in New York State Penal Code, if you fear imminent threat of someone losing their life, either you or another, you are allowed to use deadly physical force. You're allowed. Daniel Penny, I don't thought he was using deadly physical force, but it ultimately turned out that the chokehold was deadly physical force. I do think that he should have been not even charged the same way the two passengers who assisted him in holding Jordan Neely down weren't charged. And the fact that they weren't charged also with the same charges for acting in concert with him just shows how weak Alvin Bragg's case was immediately. So it's absolutely ridiculous that we're even still here. I'm praying for Daniel Penny. I don't know what's going to come of it. But I do believe this is going to lead. I think we're headed towards a mistrial. I do. I think we're headed towards a mistrial.
Well, I don't have too much faith in the juries. I mean, shout out to Scooch, Dave Savella, who put up a picture of the jury. I mean, you have someone there who has a double mask on. I mean, I don't have too much faith in the people that are sitting there. I find it ironic that someone is deciding whether Daniel Penny took action because someone was at actual safety risk for the lives of others. And then we have someone there who won't walk around without a mask, but walks around with two masks, who is really concerned about their own safety. So I really find some irony there. I think it's a complete paradox when we actually look at some members of the jury. Again, I pray for Daniel Penny. I don't think that he intended to kill Jordan Neely by any form. I believe he tried to control him to stop him from hurting others. I believe that Daniel Penny perceived a legitimate threat. And I do believe, based on Jordan Neely's past, that he was a legitimate threat on that day. We have several witnesses who have indicated that they were scared, intimidated, and he took action. I mean, if he really wanted to kill him, if that was his intentions, we would have seen blunt trauma or maybe the use of an object. We didn't see any of that. A choke can be a deadly form of force utilized, but then again, any form of force can be deadly. If you punch someone to stop them, that could potentially turn deadly. We don't know what happens. I mean, the outcome of force being applied, unfortunately, we can't determine that. We could do our best based on our training, based on our knowledge. I mean, some people here are really saying some real demeaning stuff towards Daniel Penny, but you have to ask yourself, I'll be honest, if Daniel Penny is convicted, what happens to New York City? What happens to potential other good Samaritans? God forbid a woman is being attacked. And what if a young girl is being raped in an alleyway? Will someone step in to help? And some people may say, well, that girl's being raped already, and Jordan Neely wasn't taking action. So what if we see someone walk a young girl towards an alley or say some things that are demeaning, and we just see her scared? Is someone going to step in to help? I mean, some people their argument is that he wasn't actually hurting anyone. Well, Daniel Penny acted before that happened. He perceived a life-threatening situation, and he perceived the danger to be imminent, and he took action.
Yeah, I agree with you. You have a little bit of time? How you looking on time?
Let's go.
All right. Driver Seats wants to go into the flip-flopping of Eric Adams. I want to just pull up. We'll end in the Daniel Penny thing and to a segue into Eric Adams flip-flopping. I'm going to pull up the Newsmax interview that I did, which is both of those. It's Daniel Penny into the thing. I'm going to go get coffee and then and then I'll be right back. I'll pull up that interview. Let's watch. I think it's highly relevant to both of these topics, and it's a good segue into Eric Adams flip-flopping because there is an interview that Eric Adams did yesterday on Marsha Kramer that it is disgusting, and I did want to get that today, but we did spend a lot of time on obviously on this murder. A lot of people are interested in it, but yeah, let's bring this up. I'm gonna go get coffee. This was an interview I did that the NYPD was furious about, and I've been getting a lot of hate ever since I did it. And then let's do this, and I'll be right back, people, and we'll continue on Eric Adams flip-flopping. Anything before I play this, Eric?
No, same thing. Listen, nature calls. I'm gonna take a quick break. I'll be right back. Check out this interview. I think John did a great job. Spot on. I love the interview. I think that he did a great job, by the way. I think he asked great questions. It was a fantastic interview. John, shout out to you, brother. Did a great job. Spot on. Great answers. Were honest answers, real answers. And that's what New Yorkers have to hear. So great performance. And we'll be right back. Let's do it.
All right, let's do it.
You can look at that on a multi-faceted approach of everything that's wrong with the system that we're facing. One, look at the photo that they used to show the victims. It seemed like it was a young, innocent child who was brutally murdered, and it gave that impression. When you looked at the photo that was being used, it wanted to set up in the minds of people that we were dealing with a young innocent child that, just a Michael Jackson intimidator that, was just brutally assaulted. Then you look at the complete failure of our mental health system. The young man in this case was going within our system, throughout the revolving door of our system. Now, we're on the subway where we're hearing someone talking about hurting people, killing people. You have someone on that subway who was responding, doing what we should have done as a city and a state of having a mental health facility. Those passengers were afraid. I'm hoping that the jury will hear all the facts. Based on all the facts that's laid out, a jury of his peers would make the right decision. And I don't want to prejudge that. I'm just looking at all the facts that are involved here and what we did to get to where we are and what we're seeing, because that could have easily been a case where you saw 3 innocent people murdered on our street 2 weeks ago.
So, friends, is the tide turning towards sanity in New York City? Joining me now is retired NYPD Lieutenant John McCarry. John, thank you so much for joining me this evening. What are your thoughts on what Mayor Eric Adams is saying to support the defense of Daniel Penny?
Well, I think he's 100% correct. I wish he would have came out pre his indictment and been as strong in his words and said exactly what happened as this played out in the media. I mean, the first day this happened, I was quoted in Fox News, and I said, this is a failure in public safety. The city of New York failed Jordan Neely, they failed Daniel Penny, and they failed everybody that was on the subway car with him. And this man is being politically persecuted. Under Article 35, New York State Penal New York State Penal Code, you have the right to self-defense. And that is if you fear for imminent threat of death towards yourself or another, you have the right to use deadly physical force. Now, I don't believe that Daniel Penny felt he was using deadly physical force, but this prosecution is to me, it's completely political. It's not even warranted at all.
And what kind of message would this send to New Yorkers if they did hold Daniel Penny accountable and throw charges at him and throw him in jail?
Self-defense doesn't apply in New York City. If you convict Daniel Penny, self-defense doesn't apply to you in New York City. The mayor brought it up. He talked about the 3 people that were stabbed and murdered on New York City streets. And that person, the murderer, walked numerous city blocks, bloodied clothes and a knife. Nobody stopped him. And everyone's like, why didn't anyone stop him? It's called the Daniel Penny effect. People are afraid. People don't want to go to jail for acting.
Do you think that Mayor Eric Adams has had, he's obviously had a serious change of tune. I had a guest on earlier this week that said she thinks that Eric Adams actually always felt the way that he's currently now sharing that he feels about politics, policy, President Trump supporting his agenda for mass deportation of all these illegal aliens. But early on, 2020, 2021, 2022, he was singing the complete opposite. He was towing the party line for the Democrats. Do you think that he's actually now just speaking his mind and says, throw caution to the wind, screw you if you disagree with me? Or do you think that he's changed his tune because he's seen the absolute disaster that open borders and sanctuary policies have done to New York and New York City?
To me, I think Eric Adams is a willow. He's definitely not an oak. He goes whichever way the wind blows, and if the wind blows in his favor, that's the way he turns. He changed his tune post-indictment after he became the first indicted New York City mayor, and Donald Trump won the election. He's been for 3 years advocating for open borders, and he said early on, me and Alvin Bragg are one and the same. Our vision on public safety are one and the same, and clearly he's speaking out now. He should have came out from the beginning. And honestly, the buck stops with him. He's talking about the failure in mental health in New York City. It stops with him. Why weren't police officers on the train that day? It all stops with him.
Do you think there's any chance that New York sometime in the future would actually start nominating, appointing, and electing individuals that are more on the conservative Republican side? Or do you think that it's just lost, that New York will be blue forever?
I think that the GOP needs to put a play into New York City, into all the boroughs in New York City. I think they need to stop letting Democrats run unopposed in New York City, actually putting viable candidates up, supporting them, funding them, and stop what our big GOP donors have been doing is funding Democrats. That's what's been going on in New York City. That's the problem in New York City.
Yeah, I know Rudy Giuliani's son, was it his son that was running? I think there's been some prominent conservatives that have tried to break through that blue barrier in New York. But I don't know if it's the elections or how they're ran. Who knows? I think that most Americans believe that New York City is not what we want our cities to look like. Yet it seems like the people just keep voting for the same individuals. What was going through your mind when it was announced that President Trump was going to become the new and next commander-in-chief?
I mean, I instantly knew. I think we'll go with that. We don't need any more of that. But that was the thoughts on. He goes into we spoke about Penny, and then he goes into Eric Adams flip-flopping. So I just thought it was a good segue into that. Just came out right now. Free Press is reporting that the defense is requesting a mistrial. And obviously, the prosecution is saying that they don't want a mistrial in the Daniel Penny. So that just came out right this second. So let's see how that plays out.
Well, that goes exactly to what we were talking about, right, John? Because what I say earlier, I said that if this plays out into a mistrial, a hung jury, then a second trial, he has a much better chance because the judge knows and the district attorney knows and our justice system knows that politics weighs heavily on our justice system in the day and age that we are right now. No longer is Lady Justice blind. Our politics has infected this justice system. And with a MAGA Eric and a MAGA Ritchie Torres and a complete spin on politics and a MAGA Kathy Hochul and a different spin that we see on politics right now, that Daniel Penny has a greater chance in a second trial. And this is their chance to actually convict him, which is what they want. In the second trial, it's probably not going to happen. Great job, by the way, David Harris. Shout out to you. I thought it was great questions. Great interview, John. I'm glad you went on Article 35. I think Article 35 is sometimes extremely overlooked in the penal law. Article 35 lays out protections for police officers and their capabilities when it comes to self-defense. It also lays it out for teachers, parents, on how to take action, and sometimes force has to be utilized, and you're protected with Article 35. So great job. I know some people are saying Daniel Penny is a hero, and some people here are saying Daniel Penny, should be convicted. But when I ask these people, when you say Daniel Penny should be convicted, in that case, what are your solutions? If you were put yourself in Daniel Penny's position, if you were on that train that day, and Daniel Penny perceived a threat, and if you were Daniel Penny and you perceived a threat and you thought he was potentially going to hurt others, what would you do differently? Would you take action to help those people? And potentially, what if he did take out a knife? Or what if he did just grab an older woman and start attacking them, and then Daniel Penny took action? What would be your action? So before you condemn him, ask yourself, if you were in that position and you had an opportunity to be on the train that day, what would you do?
Yeah, I agree. So for those of you guys that are just joining us, this is New York's finest retired and unfiltered podcast, also known as the Finest Unfiltered. You can find our Instagram handle and TikTok handle at the Finest Unfiltered. You can follow us on X at the Finest Cast. We put out a lot of satirical memes. We have a great person in the background who helps us put these memes together. And we point out the hypocrisy in the political spectrum in New York City, how it relates to common sense, how it relates to policing. Someone asked here, why is politics brought into everything? It's because politics is life. It controls every aspect of our lives. Policing, law enforcement, schooling, healthcare. It affects absolutely everything. So everything does come down to politics. So Eric Adams, who advocated for open borders, who advocated to defund the police, who advocated for all of basically everything we've seen play out from the Democratic Party in New York State and New York City and nationally, is now attempting to distance himself from his positions. He's now calling for closed borders. He's calling for deportations. He's calling for Daniel Penny to be free. He's calling for everything. So we did a bunch of satirical memes about it. Here it is. I'm a patriot. Now, pardon me. This is Eric Adams as George Washington. We refer to him as Chairman Adams. And this has been a coordinated propaganda campaign because this is what it's like daily. The guy has no stances. Like I said on David Harris Jr., he is a willow, not an oak. He goes whichever way the wind blows, and only the wind that puts puts wind in his sails. It has to be to benefit Eric Adams. Eric Adams does not say anything because he cares about the greater good of New York City, because he cares about public safety. What benefits Eric Adams, the first indicted New York City mayor? Here he is on a horse, waving an American flag with a Make America Great hat again. The person, and is now sucking up solely to Donald Trump, the person who just a few short weeks ago, he said he had Rikers Island ready to put Donald Trump in. Eric, what do you think about Eric Adams flip-flopping?
Well, I want to read this comment because it's important, and it goes into Eric Adams flip-flopping. So I want to push back David Hunter in New York City. He says, Jordan Neely had 0 weapons. Stop insinuating that he had a knife. This is dishonest. We're not saying he had a knife. What we're saying is...
When the hell do we ever say he had a knife?
No one said that. I said, what if Jordan Neely had a knife? What if Jordan Neely grabbed a woman? What we're saying is, what if situations, because nothing actually happened. The actual violence by Jordan Neely wasn't acted upon because Daniel Penny stepped in. So my point is, do we wait? Does it have to be Jordan Neely or someone else to take out a knife? Do we wait for them to grab someone before we take action? And what Daniel Penny did was he took action before something happened. And that is because he perceived a threat, an imminent threat, not just based on his own observations, but obviously we have some witnesses who said he was a threat, and 2 other people helped Daniel Penny control Jordan Neely, which means they also perceived the threat. So we're saying, what if? We're saying is, what I'm asking is the people that are in opposition. There's a lot of people, especially David Hunter, who believe Daniel Penny is a criminal here. So I'm asking you is, do you believe that Daniel Penny or someone else should wait till the actual violence is committed before they step in? Or do you think it's okay that they step in because they perceive a threat? So that's what we're asking here. Gunslinger, shout out to you, $9.99. Coffee and donuts. Daniel Penny is innocent. End the message. I agree. I agree with you. David Hunter, some of the other people that are in opposition, I believe you're allowed to your opinion. But what I'm asking is, just test your logic. When you give your opinion, test your logic. Should someone step in before something happens? Or should we wait, figuratively speaking, before the knife is in the throat, before we take action? Now, when it comes to Eric Adams, this is very important because politics has infected this case. Because there was a case shortly after this case on the subway where 2 black men were involved as mutual combatants, and one stabbed the other one, and he was never charged. It was considered self-defense. So I do believe this case is political because Daniel Penny is white. He's also a former Marine. There is some bias towards former military also. And I think that as pre-indictment, Eric Adams was not standing up for Daniel Penny. But now that Eric Adams is MAGA Eric and he needs a pardon, he's standing up for common sense. So at this point, it's common sense that Daniel Penny perceived a legitimate threat and he tried to help others on the train. Why? Because the evidence around it. 2 other people helped it. Other witnesses saying a threat. Jordan Neely's past shows that he was a legitimate threat that day. And I don't think we should wait till someone's actually being choked, till we help, or someone is actually being hurt. You know, it's unfortunate Jordan Neely lost his life, but what's unfortunate is that the other actions that could have been taken to help Jordan Neely, mental health services, actually having him hospitalized, getting his mental health taken care of, were completely bypassed and surpassed. And Daniel Penny was met with this problem on that day.
Yeah, everyone's sitting here saying, oh, look at the evidence. Look at the evidence around Daniel Penny. Yeah, look at the evidence. You have numerous women on the train that was thanking Daniel Penny, telling the cops that Daniel Penny did a great job. And they testified to the fact, I ride New York City trains every day. I see mentally ill people every day. I see homeless people every day. But this was different. I was afraid for my life. We see the video of the girl handshaking, and she's like, if Daniel Penny, she didn't say Daniel Penny, but she said, if he lets go, we got to run. They were afraid for their life. So, like we said, it falls into play. Self-defense falls into play. You don't need to, if you feel the threat is imminent, and clearly it was, and someone points out here that Jordan Neely assaulted an elderly person in the past on New York City subways. It was an irrational thing to believe that, Just me donate $9.99 to the podcast. Free penny. Common sense. He's a hero. Yeah, and listen, I don't think we're not sitting here saying that he's a hero because he killed Jordan Neely. No, it's a horrible thing that Jordan Neely died. New York City failed Jordan Neely. New York City failed Daniel Penny. New York City failed everyone on the train car that day. Why? Because we spend $1 billion a year to deal with mentally homeless people, mentally ill people. We spend another $1 billion a year to deal with the homeless issue. What has been done to address the fact that Jordan Neely was homeless? Nothing. What was done to address the fact that Jordan Neely was mentally ill? Nothing. So, and then what happens? New York City mayor comes out, and you clearly heard him on that interview with Newsmax, where he said that it's a failure in the mental health system. No, it's a failure on the elected leadership that are funding these programs that do absolutely nothing to help either of those facts. So who does that ultimately fall on? It's a failure on Eric Adams. He's had 3 years to correct it, and he hasn't done it. And now all of a sudden he changed his tune. So I'm not sitting here saying that Daniel Penny is a hero because he murdered Jordan Neely. Jordan Neely didn't deserve to die. I don't even believe that Daniel Penny believed he was killing Jordan Neely. I don't believe it. I could just there were two other people assisting him, right? They should have let him know, oh, all right, he's good. And the minute they said, all right, he's good, he's unconscious, he let go of him, right? And tried to help him. And then he tried to help him after that. So, he was clearly afraid. He was afraid for others. He was afraid for himself, and he stepped up. That's why Jordan Neely's. That's why Daniel Penny is a hero. It's not because Jordan Neely died. Nobody wanted Jordan Neely to die, especially Daniel Penny. And look what happened.
Shout out to my brother here, Mikey G, metal detector, Long Island. Give me, breaking my chops earlier today with my Starlink. We had a windstorm over here where I'm at in California, so it was kind of rough. I apologize for that. But I agree with his statement right here. We're not saying he's a hero for taking the life of another, but he's a hero for Mikey G's statement right here. He's a hero because he stepped up and protected people on that subway car from an EDP. Absolutely, because an EDP, an emotionally disturbed person, is unpredictable. It's not predictable in what they're going to do. So, again, for some of the people here that are saying that Daniel Penny should have killed him, well, what I'm saying is you still haven't answered that. David Hunt in New York City, you're saying he doesn't deserve to die. I understand that. And I don't think Daniel Penny felt he should die either. But what I'm asking you is David Hunt in New York City and other people that are, agree with you, or I want to test your logic, is what actions should Daniel Penny and others on the subway car should have taken then if they perceived the threat? What other actions could have deployed? You're saying, he shouldn't have died, but what other actions, if force was going to be applied, what type of force do you recommend? And if not, what other actions could they take? Because obviously, again, John said, I said it several times, I'm going to reiterate and regurgitate this information. 2 other people assisted Daniel Penny. So are we saying all 3 people wanted to kill him? Did all 3 people or all 3 people perceive the threat? And exactly that. As soon as he went limp and he was advised by the other 2, Daniel Penny let go. I don't think Daniel Penny had any intention to kill him. Some people are saying he's a Marine. Yes, he's a Marine. He had training. But that doesn't mean that that's his complete focal point facet. It's almost like in the morning, I take vitamins, right? And I take specific vitamins. I take vitamin D, vitamin C, magnesium. Now, I don't take a multivitamin. A multivitamin is a little bit of each thing, right? I focus on specific vitamins. It's the same thing. Marines have a vast amount of information, a vast amount of training. They get a little bit of everything. They're not completely focused in on the physical aspects of it, or the firearms. They get a little bit of everything. So him trying to help, and using some force does not mean he's completely proficient in chokeholds or physical violence. He had a little bit of training. It's not like a UFC fighter where that's his complete focus on that specific type of training. and would know how to apply and administer a chokehold and control someone without hurting them.
Yeah, I agree. So, I think something's going to break in the Penny case early this week. I do think it's going to be deemed a mistrial. I don't see how they're going to come to a conclusion on any of this. But let's just play the video, Eric Adams, and then let's get out of here. Eric Adams joined Marsha Kramer, and you really see what a flip-flopper he is. He literally goes back on literally 3 years of his administration, and he just distances himself completely from the Democratic Party, completely from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And you gotta think that just a few short weeks ago, he endorsed Joe Biden, and then immediately upon Kamala Harris being appointed as the candidate for the DNC, he immediately came out and supported Kamala Harris. He said this was the direction of the country. Now he's completely distancing himself from that statement. Here is the flip-flopper himself, the post-indictment Eric Adams. Here he goes.
And now we're hearing others are saying that Biden should pardon people because this would be difficult on their families and difficult on them, and they would have to pay high legal fees. Well, what about me? What about those mothers who are placed on FBI watch lists because they were standing up for their children?
Well, you said the other day you think that the justice system has been politicized. You believe that, don't you?
Yes, I do, with all my heart. But not only do I believe it, the president stated it. Donald Trump stated it. And countless others. You should look at some of these stories, what happened to people that stand up because of what they believe in. I believed in this city. We were going in the wrong direction with the migrants and asylum seekers. And I was very clear about that after 10 trips to Washington, D.C. I know what this crisis has done to our city long term. And New Yorkers are going to see the byproduct of $6.4 billion removed from our coffers.
So given the fact that you think it's been politicized, there's some people who think that President Trump might move to pardon some of the people who were involved in the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Do you think that's something he should do because it's been politicized, or he should not do?
I think that's the determination of the president. I believe it's imperative that we seek justice in our country.
What do you think about Eric Adams, MAGA Eric?
You know, it's amazing, right? You look at Eric Adams, like, okay, it looks like Eric, but man, if you close your eyes, would you know that's Eric Adams singing a completely different tune, completely different narrative? He's completely flipped from every policy. I mean, we could put side by side videos of what he's saying now in comparison to what he said 3 years ago throughout his entire administration, starting from him being the Biden of Brooklyn. Completely different stance right now. Again, he's all about Eric. Close your eyes. Watch this again, but do it just by listening. Just close your eyes and ask yourself, does that sound like Eric Adams? You'll look at it like, wow, that looks like Eric. But it sure isn't. Richard Kentaff, I don't know if this is a joke or serious or not. If you have the information, please send it to us. He said, breaking news says they caught the shooter in Altoona, Pennsylvania. I don't know if that's a joke, but I'm looking for it. I haven't seen anything on it. But again, Eric Adams is completely flip-flopping. I think it's an insult to every New York City resident. I think it's an insult to actually New York State residents. And again, it shows you that politics, unfortunately, is not to be trusted. Who's real? Who's trustworthy in politics? Who's phony? Who's not? Because Eric Adams, who is the real Eric Adams? Was it the Eric Adams before? Is it the Eric Adams now? I mean, John, you were saying he's going to be politically homeless. But, man, he's starting to sound like a Republican. I don't know. Who is he?
He's what's it called? He is the post-indictment Eric Adams. Hold on, I'm going to bring this up in 1 second. We got some breaking news here. Man being questioned in Pennsylvania in connection with Manhattan CEO killing. Sources tell Jonathan Four for New York and Tom Winter. I'm going to pull that article up right now. Let's see what that has to say. Hold on. Let me get this up on the screen. So we got a little bit of breaking news. So let's break off MAGA Eric. We don't know who the dude is. He's completely flip-flopping. He sounds like John McCarr. He sounds like he should just go through my Twitter. That's and now all of a sudden we're the same. All right, here we go. Here we go. It's is it up on the screen? No, it's not. There you go. All right. Man questioned in Pennsylvania in connection with Manhattan CEO killer's sources. Here we go. A man in Altoona, Pennsylvania area is being questioned on Monday in connection with last week's CEO killing in Manhattan. In part, he was found with a gun similar to the one used in the shooting, according to two sources familiar with the matter. The sources says it's too soon to determine if the case is connected to the death of Brian Thompson, but they are investigating as a new lead. NYPD detectives are headed to that area to question and assist investigators. The development comes as a private funeral is set to be held Monday for Thompson. The 50-year-old executive gunned down at point-blank range as he headed to a Midtown hotel. 5 days after the shooter, by a man captured on surveillance across Manhattan, the killer remains on the loose. The nation's largest police department is after him, along with the FBI, as the trail takes detectives to Atlanta, despite obtaining a clear image of his face, among other evidence. Late Saturday, police released additional photos. First photo shows him outside the vehicle. The other one shows him looking through the partition. The new photos came after authorities recovered a gray bag in Central Park. Sources later say the bag contained jacket and Monopoly money. So, yeah, right now someone's being questioned in Altoona, Pennsylvania.
Hey, shout out to Richard Kentaff. Thank you so much. The first to provide that on this chat and getting us up to date here with that information. Richard, good friend to the podcast. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, so let's see what happens. I mean, I don't think we're going to get anything soon, but I guess it's related to the gun. There was a couple of things about they were looking into the sales of that gun, and only a couple of those guns that they believe it to be were sold recently. And I think, I don't know if that's how it led them to get to this individual. So there's a lot of questions remain. I think, again, we're on here 3 hours, 15 minutes. I think we should wrap it up, and let's just wrap it up with the breaking news that guy's being questioned.
Before we wrap it up, I want to say shout out Coffee and Donuts, JF.999. Eric Adams is the Juan Soto of New York City politics. Outstanding. You're absolutely right. Absolutely right, JF. Always put his hands. I appreciate it. I want to say this. John and I, listen, we appreciate our friends, our listeners on this podcast. We really do appreciate we build this network together. We really do appreciate opinions that are in opposition. We welcome them. So I want to say thank you, David Hunter, New York City, who's been in opposition to what we're saying, but really respectful and having a legit conversation. That's what we want. He says, "I'm a die in the wool. I'm a die in the wool liberal. You both are conservative Republicans." Not necessarily. We don't have to be at odds with each other. True and honesty solves most problems. We are New Yorkers. We can work together. Absolutely. That's what we're saying. Yes, we're all New Yorkers. We don't live in New York right now, but our hearts are in New York. We have family in New York. Our pensions are from New York. We care about New York. We always will. And we're not at odds with each other. When I point out things that you're saying, you're right to your opinion. We have a right to our opinion. And it's not about Republican. It's not about liberal. I think when it comes to this, it comes to common sense and about life, about empathy and caring for people. Obviously, you care about people. You care about Jordan Neely. We care about Jordan Neely also, but we care about Daniel Penny. We don't want someone else to be in Daniel Penny's position or Jordan Neely's position. So I believe the blood is on the hands also of the system. It's a broken system. If the proper services were administered and applied, proper mental health for Jordan Neely, then Jordan Neely and Daniel Penny would not have met. Their worlds would not have collided on that day. And it wasn't just Daniel Penny for his world to collide. It was all the people on that train and the two people that helped Daniel Penny, their worlds collide that day. So I say opposition meets opportunity, and here's our opportunity to have discussions. So yes, thank you so much, friends, listeners, trolls, haters on the podcast. We love our haters. We love our friends. We love this network. I don't let anything bother me. You can say whatever you want about me. It doesn't bother me at all. Words don't hurt. The words that hurt are the ones that are unspoken, that you're not willing to speak the truth. So, John, great job on that interview on Newsmax. I thought you labeled out Article 35. If anyone's not familiar, take a look at Article 35 of the penal law. It really shows you your rights as a parent on how to discipline. If you're a teacher, if you're a police officer, review it, take a look at it. And don't be a fool right now. Have your eyes and ears open right now in New York City and in the entire country, and Democrats across the country, especially Eric Adams, who's now made a complete flip-flop. I don't know who Eric Adams is, but I know who Eric Adams is for. We always ask, who is he for or who he's against? He is for Eric, that's for sure. He's looking for a pardon. He's out for himself. So you know what? When it comes time to re-election, think about it. Who are you voting for? Are you voting for pre-indictment Eric, post-indictment Eric? Who's the real Eric? We don't know. God bless you. Be careful out there. John, I'll let you close it out. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, I just I don't really, listen, we all have different opinions. It's fine. I think I'm a registered Republican in Florida now. I was a registered independent in New York City only because I can't stand the Republican Party. I think Corn Pop lays it out well here. It's a constitutional conservative versus a conservative. If you know, you know. 100%. I definitely am conservative leaning. I don't bar anybody from giving their opinion or stating their opinion to me. I openly discuss politics with anybody and everybody. A lot of people just throw slander back. Not you. I'm not saying you're doing that. So we appreciate your viewpoint. I definitely wouldn't label us as Republicans though, especially not me. I mean, the Republican Party, if you look, they literally can't stand me in New York City because I point out their inept failures, their corruption, and how they lie and gaslight the same way that Eric Adams does, the same way that the NYPD was, the same way that the leftist city council does. I point out the gaslighting. I don't care what side of the aisle you're on. I don't care if we align on particular issues. When you're lying to the American people and the people you serve, and when you're not actually serving them and you're acting like you're in a no-show job, I think it needs to be pointed out. And the fact of the matter is, plenty of people on this podcast, including myself and Eric, we were forced out of our careers for nothing more than politics. Failure in politics, and the people that people would say align with us not only turned a blind eye to us, but pretended like we didn't exist and actually helped people smear our names. So I got no love for any elected officials. I believe we the people are where it's at. I believe these are the conversations that matter. And, thank you everybody for joining us today. And we'll go further. There's a lot of stuff we didn't get to cover today. We'll be back tomorrow. We go live Monday through Friday, 8:05 live. We're up on X. We're up on YouTube. We're up on Rumble. We're also up on LinkedIn. So we appreciate everybody for tuning in. Your thoughts are always welcome. We appreciate it. And, we got nothing else. So thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll be back at you tomorrow. Take care.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?
Law enforcement professionals dedicate their lives to serving and protecting our community. But who's protecting their financial futures? That's where Laidlaw Blue comes in. Our wealth management platform is specifically designed for the law enforcement community. Laidlaw Blue is a division within Laidlaw Wealth Management, run by retired New York City detective John McDermott. His status as a retired detective uniquely positions him to establish a deep connection between Laidlaw Blue and the law enforcement community. Our platform is easy to use and provides a range of financial services, including investment management, retirement planning, and insurance solutions. With Laidlaw Blue, you can secure your financial future and provide for your loved ones. Our team of experienced financial advisors understands the unique challenges and opportunities that law enforcement professionals face. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of financial planning and achieve your goals. Laidlaw Blue. Secure your financial future today. Book a meeting using the QR code displayed or call us directly on 888-901-BLUE. That's 888 901 Blue.